Chapter 227. The street in front of the government office was silent. The commoners looked at the charred pit on the street, their faces filled with fear and confusion. Zhou Quan had already disappeared, but the scene of him being struck to ashes by the divine lightning from the heavens was still replaying in everyone's minds. The two supernatural power cultivators looked at the scene in a daze, their bodies turning cold. The purple heavenly thunder was dozens of times stronger than ordinary thunder techniques. It was a high-level thunder technique that could only be released by creation realm cultivators. Even if Zhou Chu had several life-saving trump cards, he could not withstand the continuous lightning from the heavens. The purple heavenly thunder had the power of the fifth realm. Even they could not withstand it. They could only watch as Zhou Chu turned to ashes, his soul dispersing under the purple heavenly thunder. As soon as the last thunder subsided, a figure dashed out of the divine capital office. Zhang Chun's expression changed. He asked, "Purple heavenly thunder? Who attracted the purple heavenly thunder?" Li Mu shook his head, indicating that he did not know. Zhang Chun looked around and asked, "Where's Zhou Chu?" As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something and said angrily, "How dare you? Zhou Chu is a sinner. He was taken away as soon as he was released from the government office. Does the Zhou family have no regard for the law?" Li Mu pointed at the pit on the ground and said, "Zhou Chu is there." Zhang Chun stared blankly at the charred pit on the ground. Li Mu explained, "Zhou Chu killed the old man. After he was released from prison, not only did he not repent, he even held a grudge. He threatened the victim's family in front of so many citizens and was disrespectful to the heavens. Finally, he angered the heavens and sent down several purple heavenly thunders. He died from the wrath of the heavens. Everyone here can testify." Zhang Chun said in shock, "Zhou Chu is dead? Struck to death by lightning?" The onlookers finally came to their senses and spoke. "The heavens have eyes, the heavens have eyes. The heavens are watching what people do. Even the heavens can't stand his evil deeds. Good strike, good strike. Even the heavens are upholding justice for us citizens. Good has its reward, evil has its retribution. The heavens are watching from above." Zhou Chu's actions just now had aroused the anger of the people. The people had seen him die from the wrath of the heavens with their own eyes. The joy in their hearts was indescribable. The guard with the broken arm came to his senses and pointed at Li Mu, angrily saying, "It's you, it must be you, you used a scheme to kill the young master." Li Mu looked at him and said, "You have to have evidence before you speak. If I could use the heavenly thunder of purple cloud, I would have destroyed you, who are worse than animals, long ago. Why would I wait until now?" The guard said, "Fu Lu, you must have used Fu Lu." Li Mu said coldly, "Did you see me use Fu Lu just now?" It was impossible for him to use the heavenly thunder talisman in front of everyone. The guard changed his words again. "Taoist technique? You use Taoist technique." Li Mu mocked, "It can make a cultivator of the third realm use the fifth realm heavenly thunder of purple cloud. If I knew this Taoist technique, the 4 sects and 6 schools of Buddhism and Taoism would have to worship me. Why would I need to stay in Luoyang and be bullied by animals like you?" The guard opened his mouth and was speechless. No matter what the cause of the young master's death was, someone had to bear the responsibility. If it was not this constable of the Luoyang government, it would be them. As guards, they would not live long if they let the young master die. He clenched his teeth and crushed the jade talisman in his hand. The moment the jade talisman was crushed, a strong aura shot up from the Ministry of Works. A figure stepped on the air and appeared at the entrance of the Luoyang government in an instant. Zhou Ting looked at the two and asked, "What is it? Where is the young master?" The one-armed guard lowered his head and said in fear, the young master was killed." Zhou Ting's expression changed. "What? My son is dead?" The one-armed guard pointed at Li Mu and said, "Sir, this person killed the young master." He was furious. "Where is his body? Where is his soul?" The guard said with a trembling voice, The young master's soul has dissipated." Zhou Ting took a few steps back. As a fifth realm cultivator, he could not control his emotions. His body was trembling slightly. He grabbed the guard by the neck and lifted him up. He clenched his teeth and said, "What did you say? Say it again." The one-armed guard's eyes were wide open. He said with difficulty, The young master died under the heavenly thunder of purple cloud." Zhou Ting let go of his hand and threw him aside. He looked at Li Mu with a murderous gaze. Zhang Chun said hurriedly, "Sir, Zhou Ting died under the wrath of the heavens. So many people saw it with their own eyes. You can't blame anyone else." Zhou Ting looked at the charred pit under his feet. He closed his eyes and his lips trembled slightly. No one could hear what he said clearly. However, his cold and emotionless voice sounded in the ears of the two guards. "Kill this person, and I will ensure that your primordial spirits are not destroyed." The two guards looked at each other. Killing an official meant death. If the young master died, they would also die if they went back. Only by obeying the Zhou family would they have a sliver of hope. In the next moment, one of them drew his sword and slashed at Li Mu without hesitation. The other person's artifact had long been broken by Li Mu. He clenched a fist with one hand. His fist was suffused with white light. He punched at Li Mu's chest. "Return my young master's life." The sword light cut through the air. The fist created a sonic boom. It went straight for Li Mu's chest. Their speed was extremely fast, but there was someone who was even faster than them. Before the two of them attacked, Zhang Chun had already taken a step forward and blocked in front of Li Mu. After being blocked by Zhang Chun, the two of them paused slightly. They were about to push Zhang Chun back when they suddenly lowered their heads and looked at their chests. Two small golden swords pierced through their chests. Their hearts were pierced. The two of them died instantly. Just as their primordial spirits escaped, the two small swords came back and pierced into their primordial spirits. They exploded immediately. Their primordial spirits were completely destroyed by the self-destruction of the golden sword shadows. In Li Mu's hand, the last two sword talismans turned into ashes. He looked at Zhou Ting's father and said coldly, "Those who assassinate an official will be killed on the spot." "You are the constable of the divine capital?" Zhou Ting looked at him. His facial muscles trembled as he asked, "My son died because of you?" Li Mu felt the emotions of the people around him. He knew that this was a rare opportunity to gain their trust. He looked straight into Zhou Ting's eyes and said, "Zhou Ting died because of the wrath of heaven. Even if heaven doesn't kill him, I will kill him. Then you can go to hell." With his only son dead, Zhou Ting had lost his last bit of rationality. A giant golden palm condensed behind him and slapped down on Li Mu's head. "How dare you? How dare you hurt people in the divine capital?" Zhang Chun's face was dark. He raised his hand and slapped out. The giant golden palm turned into specks of light and dissipated in the air. Zhou Ting's eyes narrowed. He looked at Zhang Chun with some caution. At this moment, Zhang Chun suddenly realized something. He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered a few steps back. He sat on the ground and pointed at Zhou Ting. He cursed, "Zhou, how dare you try to murder an official of the imperial court in broad daylight? Do you have no respect for the law? Do you have no respect for His Majesty?" Li Mu helped Zhang Chun up. With a flip of his hand, a porcelain bottle appeared in his palm. He poured out a pill from the bottle and handed it to Zhang Chun. He said, "This is a healing pill. Lord Zhang, please take it." Zhang Chun swallowed the pill and smacked his lips. He looked at Li Mu and said, "That palm strike contained decades of experience. I'm seriously injured. This pill is good. Do you have more?" Li Mu gave him the entire bottle. He still had a few bottles of such pills. A figure was rushing over from afar. Soon, Li Mu sensed a familiar aura. Mr. Mei appeared beside Li Mu. He looked at the corpses of the two guards on the ground, then at Zhou Ting and Zhang Chun. He asked in a low voice, "What happened?" Zhang Chun pointed at Zhou Ting with a mournful expression. He said, "Mr. Mei, you have to help me. This man tried to murder an official of the imperial court. He didn't care about the law at all. He didn't care about Her Majesty at all." Mr. Mei looked at Zhou Ting and asked sternly, "Lord Zhou, is this true?" The inner guards obeyed the empress. Even Zhou Ting didn't dare to be arrogant in front of the inner guards. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "This man killed my son. I wanted to avenge him. Zhang Chun came to me voluntarily. I didn't try to murder an official of the imperial court." Mr. Mei was shocked when he heard the first half of the sentence. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "Zhou Ting is dead. Did you kill him?" Li Mu hurriedly said, "Lord Mei, you can't simply say that. Just now, these commoners were all here. A few hundred pairs of eyes were watching. Ask them, have I ever touched a single strand of hair?" Hearing this, many people defended Li Mu. It has nothing to do with Constable Li. Zhou Ting was punished by the heavens. We all saw it. He was disrespectful to the heavens. That's why the heavens struck him with lightning. Everyone saw it. He didn't die in one strike. He was struck several times. I counted. He was struck 4 times. The 4th time, he was struck by lightning. There wasn't even a speck of dust left. Constable Li must have woken up the heavens with his scolding. The heavens couldn't bear to see Zhou Ting continue to do evil, so they took him in. Mr. Mei looked at the generous crowd and found it hard to believe. The way of heaven was mysterious. No one knew or grasped the rules. If one did evil, they would be punished by the heavens. How many people were struck to death in Luoyang every day? However, with Li Mu's presence, this matter had a trace of credibility. After all, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened to him. She moved her lips and looked at Li Mu. She asked, "Did Zhou Ting really die because of the heavens?" Li Mu nodded and said, "We all saw with our own eyes that after Zhou Ting was released from prison, he didn't repent. Instead, he threatened the victim's family in front of so many people. Later, he was disrespectful to the heavens and insulted them. Perhaps the heavens couldn't stand such a beast, so they struck him with lightning. Not long ago, there was a woman who died unjustly in Yang County. She was wronged and died because of the injustice. After she died, she became an evil spirit. Today, Zhou Ting did all kinds of evil deeds and died because of the wrath of the heavens." He looked at the charred pit on the ground and sighed. "Good and evil will be rewarded. The heavens are reincarnated. If you don't believe it, look up and see who the heavens forgive." Chapter 228. Zhou Ting clenched his fists and veins popped out on his forehead. However, in front of Mr. Mei, he could only suppress the pain of losing his son and his anger towards Li Mu and Zhang Chun. He didn't believe in divine punishment at all. The way of heaven was mysterious, and the so-called divine punishment was just an excuse used by foolish people to comfort themselves. The evil spirit incident in Yang County wasn't caused by her injustice, but by the truth. Zhou Chu's death was definitely not due to divine punishment. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Mr. Mei and said, "Mr. Mei, do you also believe in divine punishment?" Mr. Mei wasn't sure. He glanced at Li Mu and said, "No matter what, the heavenly thunder of purple cloud isn't something that can be attracted by cultivators in the assembled God state. This has nothing to do with Li Mu. We'll only know the details after the investigation." Many commoners and officials heard the thunder in broad daylight in the Luoyang city. 2 constables from the Ministry of Justice arrived late. When they saw the charred pit, 2 corpses, and Zhou Ting, whose veins were popping out on his forehead, they knew they couldn't get involved. They were about to leave when Zhou Ting suddenly said, "This case involves the Luoyang government. They should avoid arousing suspicion and hand it over to the Ministry of Justice for investigation." The 2 constables from the Ministry of Justice stopped in their tracks. Their faces fell completely. One of the constables gritted his teeth and walked forward. He asked, "What happened here? Who killed these 2? The 2 corpses on the ground were the most eye-catching things. The constables recognized them as Zhou Chu's guards. Both of them died on the street, but they didn't know where Zhou Chu went. Li Mu said, "These 2 tried to assassinate me. I've killed them in front of everyone. The people around can testify. I can testify that these 2 tried to kill Constable Li. They deserve to die. They did evil with Zhou Chu all day long. They should have died long ago. Why didn't those thunderbolts kill them too?" With the people around as witnesses, it was easy to cover up what happened to the 2 guards. The constable's job was to chase after criminals and bandits. Their lives were easily threatened when faced with the heretical cultivation of demonic ghosts. In the case of a fatal crisis, they had the right to kill the villains who threatened their lives on the spot. As a constable, he could empathize with Li Mu. He understood Li Mu's actions very well. He skipped over this matter and asked again, "What about those thunderbolts just now?" One of the commoners said, "Zhou Chu committed all kinds of evil and was disrespectful to the heavens. The heavens sent down a few bolts of lightning and struck him to death." That constable was stunned on the spot. Giving Zhou Ting a glance, he said in disbelief, "Young Master Zhou was struck to death by lightning." The development of the matter had greatly exceeded his expectations. This was no longer a matter that the two of them could handle. The constable hurriedly said, "This case is of great importance. It must be decided by the Ministry of Justice. Those related to this case, please follow us back to the Ministry of Justice for trial." Li Mu wasn't directly related to Zhou Chu's death, but it was also indirectly related. Naturally, he had to make a trip to the Ministry of Justice. Zhang Chun swallowed a pill and said, "I'll go with you. I'll also go to the Ministry of Justice to demand an explanation for Lord Zhou's palm strike just now." Zhou Ting's face darkened. The Minister of God's capital, Zhang Chun, was as strong as him, but he pretended to be injured by him. How shameless! We'll go with Constable Li too. We'll testify for him. Go to the heavens and demand justice if you can. Constable Li is innocent. Everyone, let's go to the Ministry of Justice and support Constable Li. The commoners were furious. They followed Li Mu to the Ministry of Justice. At the entrance of the Ministry of Justice, the bailiff guarding the door was scared out of his wits when he saw this scene. He thought that the people in God's capital were rebelling and attacking the Ministry of Justice. Upon closer inspection, he realized that the people at the front were two of his colleagues from the Ministry of Justice. "What's going on? Why did you bring so many people here?" The bailiff walked forward and said, "Quick, get the minister and the assistant minister here. Something big has happened. The minister and assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice were not here." The person in charge of the Ministry of Justice was the Minister of Justice. The Minister of Justice was shocked when he heard this. "What? Zhou Chu is dead? Wasn't he sentenced to prison?" The bailiff said, "Minister, you'll know when you go out." In the court of the Ministry of Justice, the Minister of Justice spent 15 minutes before he finally learned the truth from the commoners present. After Zhou Chu was sentenced to exile, he threatened the family of the victim in front of Li Mu and the commoners. His attitude was extremely arrogant. Li Mu could not tolerate this evil. He pointed to the heavens and cursed, hoping that the heavens would get rid of this evil for the people. Then, the heavens sent down several lightning bolts and struck Zhou Chu until his soul was scattered. If not for all the witnesses saying this, the Minister of Justice would have thought that he was listening to a story. If the heavens really had eyes and would punish the evil of the world, then what was the use of the Ministry of Justice? Logically speaking, with the enmity between him and Li Mu, the director of the Ministry of Justice would definitely do his best to give Li Mu an unforgettable experience in the Ministry of Justice since Li Mu had finally fallen into his hands. But he did not dare. The facts had already proven that the person standing in front of the court was a reckless young man who was not afraid of anything. He had just attracted the wrath of the heavens and killed an evil person. If he was angered, and he continued to point to the heavens and curse, the next person to be struck by lightning might be the Minister of Justice himself. As the Minister of Justice, he had handed down countless cases. This was the first time he had encountered such a strange and tricky case. It was impossible to say that Zhou Chu's death had nothing to do with Li Mu. But to say that he had something to do with it, he had to admit that the heavens could hear his pleas and struck Zhou Chu to death according to his wishes. In this case, what crime should he pin on Li Mu? Hiring someone to kill someone? Hiring the heavens to kill Zhou Chu, the employer was caught. Should they also arrest the murderer? The problem was, how would the Ministry of Justice arrest the heavens? As a cultivator, he did not even dare to have such disrespectful thoughts towards the heavens. After all, not everyone had the guts of Li Mu. The Minister of Justice looked at Zhou Ting and said, "The idea of the wrath of the heavens is ridiculous. Is there a possibility that the person who killed your son was actually a fifth-level master who was hiding in the dark?" He did not like Zhou Chu's actions but did not dare to act openly. So he took the opportunity when Li Mu was cursing the heavens to kill your son with the heavenly thunder of purple clouds, eliminating evil for the sake of the people. Zhou Ting's son had just died. The Minister of Justice originally wanted to choose his words carefully, but in the end, driven by his conscience, he said this word. Although he had done many evil things in the past few years against his conscience, he could be considered a good person compared to Zhou Chu. He killed an innocent person with his horse. The Zhou family had paid a great price to get Zhou Chu out of prison. But not only did he not restrain himself, he became even worse. As soon as he was released from prison, he threatened the family of the victim he killed in front of the constable of the fairy's capital. Was this something a human could do? If he had a shred of humanity left, he would not have done such a thing. It was obvious that the Zhou family had been too prominent in the fairy's capital in the past 3 years. As a result, Zhou Chu had relied on the Zhou family and was so arrogant that he had lost his humanity. Zhou Ting's face darkened. He said, "A 5th-level master is just your guess. No matter what, Li Mu is related to my son's death. How will the Ministry of Justice deal with him?" When the Minister of Justice heard this, he was already a little angry. The Ministry of Justice did not rely on the new party. The Zhou family was powerful, but this was the Ministry of Justice. What right did he have to speak to him like this? Taking a step back, how would the Ministry of Justice deal with Li Mu? If they dealt with Li Mu, it would mean that they approved of him using the heavens to kill someone. If they dealt with the person who hired the murderer, they could not let the murderer go unpunished, right? How would they deal with the heavens? What kind of person would have the guts to judge the heavens? The Minister of Justice said, "The heavenly wrath still needs to be investigated." Zhou Ting said darkly, "The heavenly wrath is just an excuse they made up. My son's death must have something to do with him. If the Ministry of Justice takes him into custody and interrogates him, we'll definitely be able to get something out of him." The Minister of Justice said with a cold expression, "Lord Zhou, are you teaching me how to do things?" At this moment, Zhang Chun stepped forward and said angrily, "Lord Zhou, your son's death is unforgivable. However, as an official of the Imperial Court, you actually tried to kill me and the Imperial Court's official. How will you deal with this?" He sat cross-legged in the court and said coldly, "If the Ministry of Justice can't give me a satisfactory explanation today, I won't leave." Lord Zhang, who had always been as timid as a mouse, suddenly became unyielding and dared to fall out with the Zhou family. Li Mu only needed to think for a moment to figure out Lord Zhang's motive. Lord Zhang was determined to make a big deal out of this and achieve his goal of being transferred out of the fairy's capital. At this time, he could not be left to fight alone. Making a big deal out of this matter would be greatly beneficial to Li Mu. As long as they were in the right, the bigger the matter, the better it would be for them. At most, they would resign and go to Mount Baiyun to live together with Lu Hanyan and Wanwan. Li Mu stepped forward and pointed at Zhou Ting. He said sternly, "You invert right and wrong, and you can't differentiate between right and wrong. No wonder you taught such a beast. He kills people everywhere, and he doesn't repent. He's waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. Everyone knows that he's a beast. It's satisfying that he died under the heavenly wrath." His voice was loud and clear. It spread to the ears of everyone in the court and outside the court. The people were in high spirits, and the psyche power in their bodies surged. They looked at Li Mushi in the hall, and some kind of colorless emotions surged in their bodies. Countless officials in the Ministry of Justice were stunned for a moment when they heard that. Then, they felt a surge of pride in their hearts. Regardless of their position, to be able to say such words in front of the Zhou family, even if he was their enemy, was worthy of their respect. This was how a man should be. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice walked to the entrance of the Ministry of Justice and stopped. He looked at the court and reminisced. The Minister of Justice asked, "Assistant Minister Zhou, what's wrong?" The Assistant Minister looked forward and said, "He looks like an old friend of mine." The Minister of Justice's eyes flickered. He had been an official for many years, but he had only seen the scene in the Ministry of Justice twice. Coincidentally, the mastermind of both incidents was here. In the court, The muscles on Zhou Ting's face twitched and the veins on his forehead throbbed. He said sternly, "Who do you think you are? How dare you insult me?" Li Mu looked straight at him and said coldly, "I've cursed the heavens above and the earth below. I've cursed all the injustices in the world. I'm not afraid of the heavens and earth. Who do you think you are?" Chapter 229. The officials of the Ministry of Justice stood at the door of the guardroom and eavesdropped on the commotion in the court. Ever since Li Mu came to the divine capital, they had seen too many firsts in the Ministry of Justice. The constable of the divine capital made the director of the Ministry of Justice speechless for the first time in the Ministry of Justice's territory. It was also the first time someone scolded an official of the imperial court and an important figure of the Zhou family in the Ministry of Justice's court. Li Mu seemed to have a natural aura around him, a fearless aura. Li Mu's saliva flew everywhere in the court, almost landing on Zhou Ting's face. A crooked stick would have a crooked shadow. Seeing Zhou Ting's face, Li Mu didn't find Zhou Ting's action strange. He didn't care about his position in the first place, and he wasn't afraid of the Zhou family. He purposely played along with Lord Zhang and blew up the matter to find out the Empress's attitude. While Zhou Ting was fuming with rage, two figures walked in from outside. The director of the Ministry of Justice heaved a sigh of relief when he saw them. He quickly walked over and said, "Lord Minister, Lord Assistant Minister, you're finally back. This case is too complicated, and I don't know how to judge it," the Minister of Justice said to Zhou Ting. "Lord Zhou, I'm deeply sorry that you lost your beloved son. The Ministry of Justice will investigate this case immediately and will hand it over to His Majesty to make a decision tomorrow morning. Lord Zhou, do you have any objections?" Zhou Ting knew that he couldn't influence the Ministry of Justice, but he could say a few words to His Majesty. He said with a dark face, "I hope the Ministry of Justice can investigate this case impartially." The Minister of Justice said, "Of course." He looked at Zhang Chun and Li Mu and said, "This case involves a lot of things. You two can return to the Yamen first and wait outside the palace tomorrow. I'm afraid His Majesty will summon you at any time." Zhou Ting's death wasn't directly related to Li Mu, so the Ministry of Justice couldn't detain him. He and Zhang Chun walked out of the Ministry of Justice and were surrounded by commoners. "Constable Li, how did it go? What did the Ministry of Justice say?" Zhou Ting's death was his own fault. The Ministry of Justice didn't blame you, did they? Faced with the concern of the people, Li Mu smiled and said, "Tomorrow, the Ministry of Justice will present this case to His Majesty and let His Majesty decide. I believe that His Majesty will give me justice." "We're all with Constable Li. I suggest that everyone write a letter to plead for Constable Li." "I agree." The silk used to sign the book of 10,000 people will be provided by Splendid Workshop. At this moment, Li Mu sensed from the people around him. Other than psychic power, he also sensed emotions that were different from before. This emotion was colorless, and it was the last emotion that he lacked among the 7 emotions. Love originated from the love and respect of the people. The people of Luoyang finally trusted and accepted him after he cursed and swore at the sky and was struck by lightning. Li Mu walked from the Ministry of Justice to the government office. The love he absorbed from thousands of people was enough for him to condense the 5th spirit, non-poison. In the small residence of the government office, Xiaobai sat cross-legged on the bed to cultivate. She did not know what was going on. Li Mu walked into the room, got onto the bed, and sat cross-legged opposite her. He formed a seal with his hands and said, 9 cycles of white qi, control the evil spirits, heavenly beasts guard the door, delicate girls guard the door, 7 spirits and softness are at peace with me, do not act rashly, look at the source of form. Non-poison, condense. His mana was no longer the same as before. It was extremely easy for him to condense the spirit and follow the spirit. After Li Mu had completely refined the love, Li Mu could clearly feel that there were some changes in his body. His mana had also increased slightly. However, compared to the increase in his mana, what he felt most was the feeling of completion that came from within his body. After condensing the love, Li Mu acutely sensed that there was a trace of love beside him. He opened his eyes and saw Xiao Bai sitting in front of him. She was holding her chin with both hands and looking at him in a daze. Her gaze was so pure and her small face was so delicate. The way she looked at Li Mu with all her attention made his heart tremble slightly. Since the second time she met Li Mu, she had never changed her mind about giving herself to him. After seeing Lu Hanyan, she was worried that Lu Hanyan would be dissatisfied, so she hid this thought. Li Mu had always thought that as a member of the Heavenly Fox clan, she stayed by his side only to repay his kindness. He did not expect that she would have the same feelings for Li Mu as Lu Hanyan. When Xiao Bai saw Li Mu open his eyes, the corners of her mouth immediately curled up. She said sweetly, "Benefactor, you're awake?" Li Mu patted her head and said, "Let's go home, the Ministry of Justice." Zhang Chun and Li Mu returned to the Yamen first, but Zhou Ting did not leave. He persuaded his family to make a deal with the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice with his position as the Nanyang Commandery Officer. He listened to his arrangements and gave the old man's family a large sum of money for them to write a letter of understanding. Through the Ministry of Justice, he reversed the sentence of the Luoyang Yamen and changed Zhou Chu's sentence from death to imprisonment. However, all of this was in vain. His son was still dead in the end. When only Zhou Ting and the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice were left in the court, the Assistant Minister glanced at him and said, "I am also very regretful about your son's death, but I have already done what I promised you. Our transaction has been completed. The following matters have nothing to do with me." Zhou Ting's eyes were bloodshot after experiencing the pain of losing his son. He gritted his teeth and said, "That matter is already in the past. There is no need to mention it again. I only want Li Mu to die now." Regardless of whether Zhou Chu's death was caused by Li Mu or someone else created the wrath of heaven to deceive the world, Zhou Ting could not tolerate Li Mu continuing to live in this world. Being pointed at and scolded in the court of the Ministry of Justice, he and the Zhou family had lost all face. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice said, "I'm afraid it won't be that easy to kill Li Mu. He is now affecting the people of the Luoyang. Moreover, your son's actions have indeed incurred the wrath of the heavens. His Majesty will not let him die, nor will your Zhou family, unless he killed Zhou Chu. However, he clearly does not have the ability to kill Zhou Chu. If you want to avenge your son, you can only stab the heavens." A moment later, Zhou Ting walked out of the Ministry of Justice aggressively. In order to settle this matter, the Zhou family had paid a heavy price. However, in the end, an important chess piece of the Zhou family in Nanyang Commandery was lost. His son was also lost. It could be said that he had lost both his son and his army. He wanted nothing more than to cut Li Mu into 1,000 pieces and grind his bones to dust. However, there was nothing he could do. As soon as he returned to the Zhou family, a servant came to invite him, saying that the master wanted to see him. Zhou Ting passed through a few doors and arrived at a study. He knocked on the door and a dignified voice said, "Come in." Zhou Ting walked into the study and said sorrowfully, "Big brother, Chu is dead." In the study, an imposing figure said, "I already know." The figure sighed and turned to look at him. He said, "I've already warned you to be strict with yourself and discipline your son well. However, you never listened and allowed him to do as he pleased in the Luoyang. That's why he has today's consequences." Zhou Ting said sorrowfully, "It's too late to say all this now. Chu is dead. His soul has dissipated. He doesn't even have the chance to become a ghost. I must catch Chu's murderer and tear him to pieces." The figure was silent for a moment. He asked, "What did the Ministry of Justice say?" Zhou Ting gritted his teeth and said, "The Ministry of Justice suspects that a Fifth Realm powerhouse killed Chu under the guise of heavenly wrath." The figure calculated with his fingers and shook his head. "No one else was involved in Chu's death. It's indeed related to that constable." Zhou Ting's eyes widened. Although he really wanted Li Mu to die, he did not think that Zhou Chu's death was caused by Li Mu. He was just a Third Realm constable and did not have that kind of ability. However, Big Brother had the cultivation of Dongxian. He could read the stars and predict heavenly secrets. It was impossible for him to be wrong. Zhou Ting said furiously, "It's really him. How did he kill Chu? The figure shook his head and said, heavenly secrets are hard to predict. It's already the limit for him to be able to predict that Chu Er's death is related to him. Zhou Ting said, I'll beg the Dean and His Majesty. They'll definitely be able to calculate everything. The figure shook his head and said, although the Dean and His Majesty have high cultivation, they can't calculate much more than me. It's better not to disturb them. It's not difficult to find out how that constable killed Chu. As long as we use the soul assimilation technique on him, the truth will come to light. Zhou Ting thought about it and said in disbelief, there are no traces of Fulu being used at the scene. There's also no such Dao technique. Could it really be? The figure was silent for a moment. Then, he said calmly, if that's the case, you don't have to pursue this matter anymore. Zhou Ting was stunned. Then, he said with a ferocious expression, am I going to die for nothing? If it's heavenly wrath, then it's the will of the heavens. The figure said, the will of the heavens comes first. The Zhou family cannot lose their sense of righteousness. You must consider the big picture. Zhou Ting was silent for a long time. Then, he said slowly, I understand. Chapter 230. Zhou Mansion. As the most powerful family in the great Zhou dynasty, the scale of the Zhou Mansion in the divine capital was even greater than that of the Shao Mansion. The Zhou Mansion was more than 100 feet long from north to south and 50 feet wide from east to west. The mansion occupied a large area. The Zhou family was prosperous. The four brothers all held important positions in the imperial court. It was said in the divine capital that the Zhou family supported half of the imperial court in the Great Zhou. This was not an exaggeration. At this moment, in a courtyard in the Zhou mansion, a middle-aged woman had fainted from crying after hearing the news of Zhou Chu's death. Chu, my poor Chu, her sorrowful cries penetrated the walls of the courtyard. The maids and servants who passed by all lowered their heads and hurried past. Zhou Chu's two sisters had already married out of the Zhou family. When they heard the news, they hurried back to console the woman. The woman cried until her tears ran dry. She grabbed Zhou Ting's hand and her eyes were filled with murderous intent. She gritted her teeth and said, Master, the person who killed Chu must be cut into 1,000 pieces. Then, his soul must be captured and burned by the nether fire day and night. Zhou Ting said coldly, Don't worry. I will make him beg for death to comfort Chu Er's soul in heaven. A young woman beside the woman raised her head and looked at Zhou Ting. She said, Father, when I came here, I heard from my husband that this matter is not easy to deal with. It could easily incite a rebellion among the people. Why don't you go to the palace and beg my sister? Beg Her Majesty to uphold justice for my brother? The other young woman beside her could not bear it. She opened her mouth several times, but in the end she sighed and did not say anything. Zhou Ting said, Ever since we forced her to marry the former crown prince, Her Majesty has been holding a grudge against the Zhou family. In these 3 years she has deliberately distanced herself from the Zhou family. If I go to the palace and beg her, I'm afraid, the young woman who spoke first said, no matter what, Chu is still her family. No matter how cold-blooded she is, she won't ignore Chu Er's death, right? The woman gritted her teeth and said, If she refuses to see you, ask Big Brother to see her. Although she is Her Majesty, will she refuse to see her own father? Zhou Ting lowered his head and said, Big Brother wants me to consider the big picture. It's impossible for him to interfere in this matter. The woman said angrily, the big picture, Chuaner's life is already gone, and he still wants to take care of the big picture? This is also related to the Zhou family's face and dignity. Shut up. Zhou Ting reprimanded her and said, For this day, our Zhou family has waited for hundreds of years. The burden on Big Brother's shoulders is not something we can imagine. He concealed the sorrow in his eyes, straightened his collar, and said, I'll enter the palace first. The Imperial Palace. Zhou Ting stood in front of a palace and bowed. This Zhou has an important matter to discuss with His Majesty. Miss Shangguan, please help me inform him. The young female official said, I'm sorry, His Majesty had some enlightenment in cultivation today and went into seclusion early in the morning. If Lord Zhou has anything to say, we can talk about it tomorrow morning. Zhou Ting was silent for a while before saying, since that's the case, this official will return first. The young woman turned and walked through the palace into the garden behind it. Mr. Mei stood behind a figure and said, Your Majesty, today in front of the godly capital government. The Empress said, I know. Her voice was very dignified, as if there was no emotion in it. Mr. Mei hesitated for a moment before saying, Your Majesty, Zhou Chu's actions have already caused resentment among the people. Although he died because of Li Mu, his death can't be blamed on Li Mu. Otherwise, the people that Your Majesty worked so hard to gather in the godly capital will scatter. The Empress looked ahead and said, You seem to be very protective of Li Mu. Mr. Mei said, I brought him here from the North County. After he came to the godly capital, everything he did was for the people and for Your Majesty. I just feel that someone like him shouldn't suffer such injustice. The Empress asked, Ali, what do you think? The young female official thought for a while and said, Although he sometimes speaks without thinking, he's a good person, a good official. The godly capital lacks people like him. Zhou Chu died from the heavenly thunder of purple cloud, and he's only a spirit condensation cultivator. Perhaps someone else is framing him and trying to take advantage of the situation. The Empress waved her sleeves, and a clear image appeared in the air. In the image, Zhou Chu was arrogant. He threatened the family of the deceased, causing anger among the people. The young constable pointed at the sky and yelled, Damn God, if you have eyes, you shouldn't let a good person be wronged and let evil people harm the world. As soon as he said that, 4 bolts of heavenly thunder of purple cloud fell from the sky. Zhou Chu blocked it 3 times, but he was still turned into ashes by the last bolt. The young female official and Mr. Mei saw this for the first time. They were shocked and couldn't recover for a long time. After a while, the young female official asked, Your Majesty, can he really communicate with the heavenly Tao? The Empress didn't answer. She only said, You can leave now. This matter will be discussed in the imperial court tomorrow. After the 2 of them left, the Empress stood alone in the garden. Her temperament gradually changed. The aura of someone who looked down on the world and was high and mighty gradually disappeared. The person standing there seemed to be just an ordinary woman. Gradually, even her appearance began to change. Her originally elegant and beautiful face gradually became ordinary. The magnificent crown on her body also transformed into ordinary clothes. Her figure disappeared. At the same time, a woman in green appeared on the streets of the divine capital. The people passing by on the street didn't realize that there was a person in the crowd. The woman in green walked to a noodle stall. When the stall owner saw her, he smiled and said, Miss, you haven't been here for a long time. The woman sat at the noodle stall and said, A bowl of noodles. The owner wiped his hands and said, Okay, same old rules. Less chopped onions, no coriander. It was lunchtime. There were many diners at the noodle stall. These people were eating and talking at the same time. The scene of the lightning striking Zhou Chu today was so satisfying. Did you all see it? No. When I rushed over, it was already over. But were you there? I was lucky to be there. That place was struck by the purple lightning. Not even a speck of dust was left. Quick, tell us. This bowl of noodles is on me. Hearing that someone was paying for today's meal, the man added another plate of beef and began to tell the story. He described how lawless Zhou Chu was. He came out of the divine capital and threatened the family of the deceased. He described how Constable Li was so angry that he pointed at the sky. Heaven and earth felt his heart and sent down several lightning bolts to get rid of this evil in the divine capital. After he was taken away by the Ministry of Justice, he scolded Zhou Chu's father in the court. It was so satisfying. In the process of telling the story, he added some details and added some emotional embellishments. The crowd blushed as if they had been there and witnessed it with their own eyes. After he finished, he didn't forget to exclaim, Constable Li is really a good constable. He really thinks about the people and stands on our side. Another customer sighed and said, This time, he has formed a deadly feud with the Zhou family. I wonder how the Zhou family will take revenge. Without Constable Li, will the divine capital return to the way it was before? It won't. We've already written a petition for the people. His Majesty will definitely seek justice for Constable Li. The woman in green finished her noodles and listened to the crowd's discussion for a while before she paid and left. Li residence. Li Mu and Xiao Bai bought some groceries on their way home. When they got home, they busied themselves in the kitchen. Compared to eating out, he enjoyed the feeling of cooking with her. In the past, Lu Hanyan was the one who cooked with him. After he came to the divine capital, Xiao Bai was the one by his side. Under Li Mu's guidance, Xiao Bai's culinary skills had reached a higher level. She was qualified to be Li Mu's assistant. After the meal, Li Mu told Xiao Bai that he was going to the palace tomorrow. At that time, he would send her to the government office first. Xiao Bai asked worriedly, "Will Her Majesty blame benefactor?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "I don't know." After all, his understanding of the Empress was mostly based on hearsay. Li Mu didn't know what kind of person she really was. However, he wasn't afraid of this case. With the clear heart technique, the soul-sucking technique was useless against him. As long as he didn't admit it, no one would be able to pin Chu Zhou's death directly on him. As for the soul-searching technique, it was extremely harmful and irreversible. Unless it was an extremely important matter that concerned the country, the imperial court wouldn't use it on an official. With the people's support, the imperial court would have to be careful no matter what they did to him. Xiao Bai said firmly, "I heard that Her Majesty is as beautiful as a fairy and has a kind heart. She won't wrong benefactor." Li Mu nodded and said, "I believe in Her Majesty." Not to mention her appearance, Li Mu was actually confident in other aspects of the Empress. He came to Chengdu because of the Empress. During this time, he could be fearless and do whatever he wanted because he had the Empress' support. Women were always very concerned about the appearance of other women. Xiao Bai blinked and said, "How beautiful is she to be as beautiful as a fairy?" Li Mu rubbed her head and said, "What do you mean by as beautiful as a fairy?" "That's because Her Majesty is. No matter how ugly Her Majesty is, no one would dare to say that she's ugly. If you want to know what it means to be as beautiful as a fairy, go back to your room and look in the mirror." Xiao Bai was stunned for a while before she realized that Li Mu was praising her. She blushed and said uneasily, "I'll go wash the dishes." The girl was still a little shy. If it were Lu Hanyan, she might have already fallen into Li Mu's arms and made love to him. Li Mu returned to his room and sat down cross-legged. Not long after, he felt sleepy. In his sleep, a fog suddenly appeared in front of his eyes and a woman's figure appeared. Seeing the familiar woman, Li Mu was stunned. Fear appeared on his face and he said in shock, "No way again." Chapter 231. Ever since that night when he was ravaged 8 times, this woman had never appeared in Li Mu's dreams again. This made him think that what had happened back then was merely a coincidence. Until now, this familiar figure had appeared in his dream once again. This made Li Mu realize that the possibility of that incident being a coincidence was infinitely close to zero. Li Mu did not leave the dream immediately. He needed to figure out what was going on. Li Mu looked at the woman from afar and asked, "Who are you?" The woman said indifferently, "You don't need to know who I am." Li Mu asked tentatively, "Are you my inner demon?" With Li Mu's knowledge, other than an inner demon, he could not think of any other possibility. Even Dongxian could not casually invade other people's dreams. This was something that even Venerable Qianhuan could not do. Inner demon? The woman looked at him and said slowly, "You can understand it that way." Li Mu said warily, "What do you want?" The woman said, "I was born because of you. Why don't you ask yourself what you want?" Her words made Li Mu no longer doubt her identity. Except for the consciousness born in his body, no one could easily enter his dreams. Many people interpreted the high-level inner demon as a second soul. According to Li Mu's understanding, it was more like a second personality. In the same body, several different consciousnesses were born. Their age, personality, and even gender could be different. Li Mu had seen this kind of setting countless times in suspense movies. Li Mu asked warily, "You want to devour my consciousness?" The woman shook her head and said, Not interested. Li Mu said in surprise. Then what do you want? The woman looked at Li Mu and said, You killed Zhou Chu. Li Mu looked at the woman. The consciousness of the inner demon and the main body did not affect each other, so she did not know what she was thinking or what she knew. However, the experiences of this body could not be hidden from her. Although the person in front of him was a woman, Li Mu knew very well that he was her and she was him. He had nothing to hide from himself. Li Mu asked, Don't people who are worse than beasts deserve to die? The woman said, Director Zhou is from the Zhou family, and His Majesty's surname is also Zhou. Aren't you afraid that His Majesty will be biased? Li Mu looked at her and said, You know a lot. The woman replied, You are me, and I am you. I know what you're thinking. Li Mu looked at her and asked, Then tell me, what am I thinking now? Li Mu thought, if the inner demon only appeared in dreams, if he had a wet dream, what would it look like in the eyes of the inner demon? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, the shadow of a whip came at him. Li Mu quickly dodged, and finally no longer doubted it. She even knew what he was thinking in his dreams. Other than his inner demon, what else could she be? The woman actually did not know what Li Mu was thinking. She only saw that his expression was strange, wretched, and lustful. He could not be thinking of anything good, so she might as well whip him first. Li Mu looked at the woman and said, Don't be impulsive. Hitting me is hitting you. The shadow of the whip slowly disappeared. The woman asked again, Why are you doing this? What good is it for you? Li Mu said, You are me. You don't know why I'm doing this? The woman did not speak. Li Mu guessed that she could only understand his thoughts in his dreams. He could not help but feel relieved. Worried that she would be angry and hang him up to beat him again, Li Mu said, Because I am a bailiff. It is my duty to get rid of evil and bring justice to the people. Moreover, His Majesty has treated me with sincerity. I have to clean up the evil in Luoyang and unite the people to repay His Majesty. The woman looked at him indifferently and said, Help her unite the people? It is unprecedented for a woman to be the emperor. It subverts ethics and disturbs the morals. How can a man become her pawn? Watch your words. Li Mu glared at her and said, During His Majesty's reign, he implemented benevolence and reformed the legal system. Many people have a better life. In contrast, during the time of the previous emperor, the 36 counties were filled with corrupt officials. Even Luoyang was a mess. If I don't help such a wise emperor, should I help a tyrant? Li Mu was dissatisfied with the woman in front of him. As his other personality, she did not have the consciousness of the main personality. Li Mu felt ashamed for having such a personality. The woman was silent for a moment. She looked at Li Mu one last time and her figure slowly faded away. Li Mu pointed at her and said, Don't go. I haven't finished talking. The woman's figure completely disappeared. Li Mu also woke up from his dream. He touched his head with a puzzled expression. This time, he did not get beaten up. This time, she was not as unreasonable as last time. He had read about the inner demons in books. They were all violent and murderous monsters. This was the first time Li Mu had heard of such a type. It was a dreamless night. Li Mu hugged Little White and slept until dawn. After sending her to the yamen, he waited outside the palace with Zhang Chun. The morning court had already begun. They did not know what was going on inside. Until now, they had not been summoned. The two of them waited outside the palace in boredom. In the Crepe Myrtle Palace, some of the courtiers were arguing in full swing. An official said angrily, A country has its laws and a family has its rules. Zhou Chu has already been tried. Who gave him the right to execute on his own? An imperial censor objected, Zhou Chu was unrepentant and deranged. He angered the heavens and attracted the thunder fire. What does it have to do with others? The official said, Who attracted the heavenly thunder of purple cloud? The imperial censor said, Do you have evidence? Some officials have already calculated that Zhou Chu's death is related to Li Mu. His death is also related to the heavens. Why don't you interrogate the heavens? You are twisting words and forcing logic. You are trying to accuse him. Whether it is true or not, We will know if we use the soul search on Li Mu. The court was divided into two factions regarding Zhou Chu's case. One faction believed that Li Mu, as an arrestor, did not have the right to execute anyone. His actions were considered intentional murder. The other faction believed that Zhou Chu died from the wrath of the heavens. The heavens were greater than everything. Even if the wrath of the heavens was caused by Li Mu, it should not be blamed on him. The two factions argued endlessly. The entire court was very noisy. Silence. The young female official's voice reached everyone's ears. Everyone shut their mouths. The court was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. No matter how they argued, the final verdict of this case still depended on the emperor. The moment the court quieted down, an image suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The scene was the scene in front of the Shendu Yamen. Zhou Chu, who was already dead, was in the picture. The officials were shocked. At this moment, they remembered that His Majesty was not only the emperor, but also an expert of the upper realm. He had already reached the peak of the profound light technique and was able to reenact the past. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the image. In the image, Zhou Chu's expression was arrogant. He said to Li Mu, "That's right, after I leave, you have to pay more attention to that old man's family. I heard that they live outside the city. You have to be careful when you walk on the road. There are many people riding horses outside. If one or two are killed, it will not be good." One of the imperial censors could not help but point at the image of Zhou Chu and said angrily, "Lawless, lawless, does he not have the law in his eyes?" Another imperial censor spat and said coldly, "This is simply the behavior of a beast. He deserves to die." In the court, many people's faces were filled with anger. This was a blatant provocation of the law and justice. They only heard that Zhou Chu was arrogant, but they did not expect him to be so arrogant. Under the strong impact of this image, several officials of the new party also retracted their heads. Whoever dares to speak up for Zhou Chu will definitely offend the public. What worried them more was the emperor's thoughts. His Majesty used his great magical power to reenact the image of yesterday. Does this mean that he is not on the side of the Zhou family? In the video, facing the threats around him, the young constable said, "God is watching what we do. God is watching us." Zhou Chu sneered, "God, after so many years, I really want to see what God looks like." "If you have the ability, let them come down." The young arrestor was obviously enraged. He pointed to the sky and scolded God for being blind. As his voice fell, several lightning bolts suddenly fell from the sky. Under the last purple lightning bolt, Zhou Chu turned into ashes. Even some of the high-ranking officials in the court felt their blood boil when they saw this scene. A few of the imperial censors were so excited that their beards trembled. Their eyes were filled with envy and reverence. This was the response of the heavenly axiom. It was the greatest recognition that the heavenly axiom gave to a person. There was no imperial censor who did not desire such recognition. A body of righteousness that can shake the heavens. How magnificent is this? He is still Li Mu, the Li Mu who wrote Do Yi's Injustice. It is His Majesty's blessing to have such a person in the fairies' capital. It is the blessing of the great Zhou. His Majesty must not wrong such a talent. The Empress's dignified voice came from behind the curtain. How do you think this case should be resolved? At the forefront of the officials, a figure stood out. Seeing the figure, all the officials held their breaths. The first person to stand out was none other than the head of the Zhou family, Zhou Chu's uncle, and also the Empress's biological father. The middle-aged man looked up at the image and said, "The people's hearts are the foundation of the great Zhou's continuation." Zhou Chu killed innocent people and did not repent. In the end, he angered the heavenly axiom and punished the heavenly axiom. The officials in the court should learn from this and restrain themselves and their descendants. They should not bully the people and bully the villagers. The head of the Zhou family's words undoubtedly determined the nature of the case. Even the officials of the new party would not use this opportunity to attack the arrestor. Zhou Ting clenched his fists and knelt on the ground with his head lowered. He closed his eyes and said in a trembling voice, "I have not taught my son well. I have let your Majesty and the people down. I am ashamed to be in the court." I wish to resign from the position of Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works. I hope your Majesty will approve. Chapter 232. Li Mu and Zhang Chun waited for a long time at the gate of the palace. Instead of the Empress, they saw Mr. Mei. Mr. Mei walked out of the palace gate and said to the two, "It's all right now. You can go back." Zhang Chun was stunned and asked, "What's going on inside?" Mr. Mei looked at Li Mu and said, "Her Majesty used the dark light technique to recreate the scene of yesterday." All the officials were furious. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works, Zhou Ting, resigned because he didn't teach his son well. Her Majesty has agreed that Zhou Ting died because of the wrath of heaven. It has nothing to do with you. You can go back now. Zhang Chun asked, "Is there anything else?" Mr. Mei asked, "What do you want?" Zhang Chun shook his head and felt a little regretful, but he didn't say anything. Mr. Mei suddenly took out a stack of fulu from his sleeve and handed it to Li Mu, saying, "This is for you from Her Majesty." Li Mu looked at the stack of purple cloud thunder talismans in his hand thoughtfully. Mr. Mei handed him a jade pendant and said, "This is also for you from Her Majesty." Li Mu took the jade pendant and looked at it over and over. He didn't see anything special about it, so he asked, "What is this?" Mr. Mei said, "This jade pendant can hide the secrets of heaven. Keep it with you." Hearing this, Li Mu suddenly felt that the jade pendant in his hand became heavier. Hiding the secrets of heaven didn't seem to have any real effect. It could neither increase defense nor enhance attack. However, it had a very important function, which was to prevent the ultimate masters from calculating. The masters of Dongxian had already seen through the mysteries of heaven. They could observe the stars and know fate. With a pinch of their fingers, they could predict good or bad luck. They could even calculate someone's location and monitor them remotely through the dark light technique. If one had something to hide the secrets of heaven, they could block the calculations of the masters of Dongxian and above. This could be very useful sometimes. The jade pendant that concealed the heavenly secrets and the stack of purple cloud thunder talismans made Li Mu wonder if the Empress knew anything about it. Logically speaking, even if a seventh realm expert could calculate that Zhou Chu's death was related to him, they shouldn't be able to confirm whether he had died directly or indirectly at Li Mu's hands. The Thousand Illusions had said before that the mysteries of heaven were hard to predict. No one could calculate all of the mysteries of heaven. The so-called arithmetic was nothing more than some hazy feelings, very difficult to be specific. He accepted the jade pendant and bowed to Mr. Mei, saying, "Sister Mei, please thank His Majesty for me." Mr. Mei sighed and said, "His Majesty has suffered a lot to protect you this time. I hope you will remember his kindness." Li Mu used to have some worries, but after today, his worries had disappeared. From today onwards, he truly regarded himself as one of the Empress men. It was a pity that he hadn't been summoned today, so he didn't have the chance to see her. However, there was no need to be anxious. Now, he had already begun to hug the Empress's thigh. There would be plenty of opportunities to see her in the future. Zhou Manor. Crush. In a small courtyard, the sound of porcelain shattering could be heard. The maids and servants all stood in the courtyard with their heads lowered, not daring to speak. The middle-aged woman picked up a vase and smashed it. She panted heavily and gritted her teeth, saying, "Zhou Chu died in vain. I can't accept this, I can't accept this." She pointed in the direction of the palace and cursed, "She's also a member of the Zhou family. How can she be so cruel?" Slap. Zhou Ting slapped her face and said in a low voice, "Shut up. His Majesty isn't someone you can talk about." The woman stood there in a daze after being slapped. Moments later, she raised her head and looked at Zhou Ting. She shook her head and said, "Crazy. Everyone in the Zhou family is crazy. I want to leave this place. If you don't avenge me, I will." Zhou Ting looked at her departing figure. He raised his foot and finally put it down. In one day he looked haggard and old. The scene in the court today kept replaying in his mind. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, saying, "Li Mu, the palace." The Empress had been in the back garden for a long time after the court ended. She looked in the direction of the Zhou family. After a long time, she retracted her gaze and asked, "Am I really cruel?" The young official said, Zhou Chu deserved his death. It can't be blamed on anyone. Your Majesty doesn't need to blame yourself for this. The Empress seemed to be asking her, but it also seemed like she wasn't asking her. She didn't say anything else and left the garden. She walked in front of a magnificent palace. Above the palace, the words, Ancestral Temple, were written. The young official stopped in front of the ancestral temple. Only the imperial family could enter the great Zhou's ancestral temple. For them, it was a forbidden area. The Empress walked into the ancestral temple. What greeted her eyes was a high platform. On the high platform, from top to bottom, there were more than 10 memorial tablets of the great Zhou's emperors. In front of the memorial tablets, sandalwood incense rose in spirals. In addition to these memorial tablets, the most eye-catching thing in the ancestral temple was a small cauldron. These small cauldrons had 3 legs and 2 handles. They were neatly arranged in a row under the memorial tablets of the great Zhou's emperors. After a careful count, one would find that there were a total of 36 small cauldrons. The 36 small cauldrons emitted a faint golden light. The golden light was strong and weak. The strong light was dazzling and the weak light was dim. The golden light of each small cauldron condensed into golden lines that converged in a giant cauldron in the ancestral temple. The giant cauldron had 3 legs and 6 handles. The body of the cauldron didn't emit any light, but there was a golden dragon swimming in the cauldron. The golden dragon felt the Empress walk in and swam out of the cauldron. It happily circled above her head a few times, and then flew back into the cauldron. In the corner of the ancestral temple, there were 3 prayer mats. 3 figures sat cross-legged on the prayer mats. Their auras were extremely obscure. They all wore black dragon robes. If one looked closely, one would find that the golden dragon embroidered on their robes only had 4 claws. An old man with a face as withered as tree bark on the left opened his eyes. He looked at the most dazzling cauldron in the center of the 36 small cauldrons and said, "The psyche power of the people of the divine capital has multiplied several times in this month. The guy you transferred from the North County is quite capable." The Empress's expression was calm. She looked at the golden dragon swimming in the cauldron and asked, "When will this strand of Emperor's qi be complete?" The old man said, "During Emperor Wen's time, the sea was clear and the rivers were clear. The people were loyal, but it took 20 years. 2 generations of emperors spent nearly 100 years to produce 1 strand, and it has already been used by you. With the current Great Zhou, it will take at least 30 years for the next strand of Emperor's qi to be complete." The Empress frowned and said, "That's too long." The old man said with a smile, "The Zhou clan has been planning to steal the throne since a few hundred years ago. We've been planning this for so long, and our ancestors have sacrificed their lives to obtain a stream of monarch qi, yet you're not interested in being the emperor. How ironic." The Empress said coldly, "The Zhou family's matters have nothing to do with me." The old man smiled and said, "I'm afraid you will have to sit in this position for a long time. You will slowly lose your family and friends. The officials will respect you and fear you, but they will never reveal their true feelings to you. Your parents will call you Your Majesty and have ulterior motives. No girl will get close to you, and no man will like you. You will slowly lose love, hate, happiness, anger, sadness. Stop talking. It's useless. This is the fate of every emperor. You will not be an exception." A golden whip appeared in the Empress's hand. She said word by word, "I told you to stop talking." The old man lowered his head and immediately fell into a deep sleep. The Empress walked out of the ancestral temple. The young female official said respectfully, "Your Majesty." The Empress looked at the respectful expression on her face and said, "Return to the palace, Fairy's capital, Li residence." Li Mu had just upgraded the formation in his residence. He used some Fulu and Dharma treasures that he didn't need in a shop in Fairy's capital that was specially opened for cultivators to exchange for spiritual jades. Then, he used the spiritual jades to buy a set of formation flags from another shop. Although Fairy's capital was mostly populated by commoners, there were a few markets that were specially opened for cultivators to trade. Using the upgraded formation of the formation chests, It could temporarily trap a fifth realm cultivator. If one wanted to sneak into the formation silently, they would have to have the cultivation of Dongxian. After doing all this, Li Mu gave most of the purple cloud thunder talismans that the Empress gave him to Xiaobai to protect herself. He only kept a few for himself. The jade pendant and the thunder talisman that the Empress gave him. One was to steal the sky, while the other was to conceal heaven's secrets. No matter how slow Li Mu was, he understood the Empress's intention at this moment. The purple cloud thunder talisman was the proof that Li Mu would use his thunder technique in the future. Otherwise, after Zhou Chu's incident, he couldn't reveal his thunder technique in front of others. This jade pendant that concealed heaven's secrets would prevent cultivators above Dongxian from finding out that he was the culprit. The Empress had thoughtfully prepared these for Li Mu. The Empress must already know that Zhou Chu's death was his doing. A transcendent powerhouse was terrifying. Even so, she still chose to protect Li Mu. This meant that Li Mu still had a place in her heart. He didn't work so hard for her in vain. Not only was she righteous, but she was also so protective. He really loved the Empress like this. Chapter 233. Half a month had passed since the Zhou Chu incident. In the morning, Li Mu, who was sitting cross-legged on his bed, slowly opened his eyes. A golden light flashed in his eyes. Although he had been preparing to cultivate both Buddhism and Taoism, he had spent more than 90% of his time cultivating under the guidance of Taoism. He had very little time to recite scriptures and practice Buddhism. Especially after entering the spirit-concentrating realm, the growth of his mana had slowed down. He had spent all his time cultivating Taoism. Now, his Taoist cultivation had reached the third realm, but his Buddhist cultivation had only barely broken through the first realm last night. The first realm of Buddhism was called breakthrough. It meant that Buddhist disciples could see through the mortal world and enter into Buddhism. This realm required the cultivation of the six senses. Now, Li Mu's six senses had been perfected. He did not need to use any supernatural powers to hear the conversation between the butcher and the waiter in the tea house a few streets away. Through his sense of smell, he could easily distinguish the various smells in the air and trace them back to their source. In a way, he already had the innate supernatural powers of some monsters. Some monsters were born with a keen sense of hearing and smell. Although humans were suitable for cultivation, they were far inferior to monsters in terms of innate supernatural powers. Li Qing had once advised him that only by cultivating one of the two sects of Buddhism and Taoism could one attain a profound level. At that time, Li Mu did not feel anything. Now, he finally realized that a person's energy was limited. Even if he was talented in both Buddhism and Taoism, it was impossible to cultivate both to a high level. The realms after Buddhism required even more time. His next cultivation focus was on how to break through to the transcendent realm as soon as possible. After the Zhou Chu incident, Zhang Chun was unexpectedly promoted again. He was promoted from Divine Capital Deputy to Divine Capital Magistrate. He was now the leader of the Divine Capital Yamen. Not only that, His Majesty did not appoint a Divine Capital Deputy or Divine Capital Magistrate. In other words, he was in charge of this huge yamen alone. No one could order him around anymore. Li Mu was still the constable of the Divine Capital Yamen. He was an official, not an official. Although officials and officials were both civil servants of the Great Zhou and were paid by the state, there was a clear distinction between the two. There were no harsh requirements to become an official of Great Zhou. Officials were generally appointed by local officials, or their sons would inherit their father's business. As long as their family background was clean and they had not committed any crimes within 3 generations, they would have the qualifications to become a glorious official of the Great Zhou. But officials were different. The lowest-ranking official in Great Zhou, even if it was just a small county magistrate, still needed to receive a few years of formal education in the academy. Only after a few years would they have the qualifications to enter the imperial court as an official. This was a rule set by Emperor Wen in order to clean up the chaos in Great Zhou's officialdom and improve the quality of the officials as a whole. At that time, this measure indeed played a very big role. At that time, the imperial court was full of nepotism, and the officials formed cliques to pursue personal interests. The morality and ability of the officials were mixed. The appearance of the academy greatly improved the situation. If one wanted to become an official in the imperial court, one had to learn the thoughts of the sages in the academies, cultivate one's morals, and learn how to govern a country and cultivate. For a long time, the academies had sent countless talents to the imperial court. This rule had been passed down since the time of Emperor Wen and had been used to this day. Even if the emperor wanted to promote someone, he had to let that person undergo tempering in the academies. Emperor Wen's rule had a far-reaching impact. In the hearts of the people and officials of Great Zhou, Emperor Wen had a very high status. The successive emperors of Great Zhou did not dare to break the rules set by him. In Li Mu's view, this Emperor Wen was really far-sighted. Although this method was different from the imperial examination, it was also very advanced compared to the previous system of selecting officials. Of course, even if Emperor Wen was called a sage, there were still things that he did not expect. For example, the nature of the academy had changed greatly from when it was first established. The deans of the 4 academies were all transcendents. In the academy, there were countless experts in the middle realm. Although they were far from the 4 sects and 6 schools, they were still an incomparably powerful force. The officials of Great Zhou could only be born from the academy. The status of the academy gradually became higher and higher, and even had a tendency to surpass the imperial court. Whether it was the Shao royal family that wanted to regain their glory or the Zhou family that wanted to replace them, to facilitate this major event, they could not do without the support of the academy. Li Mu had never thought of becoming an official, so he did not need to go to the academy to further his studies. Based on what he had seen in Chengdu, becoming an official might not be a good thing. Under the protection of the Empress, being a minor official was much more comfortable than being an official. There was no need for Li Mu to worry about national affairs. All he needed to do was to bring Xiaobai around the streets of the divine capital every day to ensure that there were no crimes or disturbances in his jurisdiction. That was enough for him to fulfill his duty. After Zhou Chu's incident, his status in the hearts of the people had risen to the peak. This allowed him to obtain willpower from the people of Chengdu without deliberately doing anything. With this speed, it was not impossible for him to advance to the Abhijna level within a year. After Zhou Chu's incident, the Zhou family's reputation in Chengdu was not greatly affected. Although Zhou Chu had committed a heinous crime, the Zhou family's handling of this matter did not make the people feel disgusted. There were many disciples of the Zhou family, and Zhou Chu was only one of them. Other than Zhou Chu, the other disciples of the Zhou family did not have any misdeeds. In comparison, the Shao royal family's performance in Chengdu was even worse. In the past few hundred years, they had been the masters of the great Zhou dynasty and Chengdu. Although they had been suppressed by the Zhou family for a short period of time, the sense of superiority in their bones could not be erased. Li Mu counted with his fingers. He had not been in Chengdu for long, but he had offended the 3 provinces, 6 ministries, 9 temples, the Shao family, the Zhou family, and the academy. Other than the academy, he had offended almost everyone he could. Li Mu had already offended the Shao family and its old clique before he came to Chengdu. When he pushed for the abolition of the substitute crime silver, he had also beaten up the children of many officials in the Ministry of Rights, Ministry of Justice, Taichung Temple, and the 3 provinces and 6 ministries. With Zhou Chu's incident, he had also offended the Zhou family. He was only missing the academy to become the public enemy of Chengdu. Among the common people, the situation was the exact opposite. Li Mu was now very popular among the common people. He could go to the small restaurants on the street, to the brothels and taverns. As long as he wanted to, he could buy food, use, and entertainment for free. When he passed by the brothel keeper ran out countless times, bringing along many girls. They all winked at Li Mu and said coquettishly, "Constable Li, come in." Xiaobai was so scared that she did not care about the candied haws in her mouth. She ran over and hugged Li Mu's arm, holding her head high and chest out in front of them. Ever since Lu Hanyan went to Mount Baiyun to cultivate, she had been strictly carrying out the task given to her by Lu Hanyan. She did not allow any other seductress to appear beside Li Mu. These girls from the brothels were naturally her main targets of protection. The brothel keeper glanced at Xiao Bai and said to Li Mu, "Constable Li, why are you so shy? The girls are not charging you." Li Mu waved his hand. Next time, the Yamen had its own rules. In order to prevent officials from being corrupt, they could not eat or take the common people's food for free. They could not go to the brothels during the day. Of course, going to the brothels during the day was also forbidden. There were countless eyes in Luoyang staring at Li Mu. He had to be careful with his words and actions. He could not give anyone a chance to take advantage of him. Xiao Bai was still hugging Li Mu's arm tightly. She said, "Sister Lu said that when you come to Luoyang, you can't fool around. You can't go to that kind of place." He was the one who saved the little fox, but she had become Lu Hanyan's spy. Li Mu looked at her and asked, "If I go to that kind of place, will you tell Sister Lu?" Xiao Bai nodded without hesitation. She said, "I promise, Sister Lu." Li Mu asked again, "If I don't let you tell her, will you listen to Sister Lu or me?" This question made Xiao Bai stop chewing on the candied hawthorn. She muttered, I. After a while, she lowered her head and said softly, I will listen to you, benefactor." Li Mu was comforted. Xiao Bai's answer proved that she was still his caring little girl. Even if she made a mistake, she would help him hide it. Who would not like a little girl like her? Of course, Li Mu would not make such a mistake. He just wanted to tease Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai lowered her head and hesitated for a while. Then she looked up and said, "Benefactor, if you want, Xiao Bai can do it too." "I have already turned into a human." Li Mu patted her head and said, "I'm joking. I won't go to that kind of place." He knew very well that before Xiao Bai transformed, she was prepared to give herself to him at any time. However, she was placed by Lu Hanyan to keep an eye on Li Mu. If she betrayed Lu Hanyan and stole from him, how could the two of them be good sisters in the future? Although Xiao Bai was indeed very attractive, Li Mu would not lose the big picture for a small gain. He would not be greedy for a moment of pleasure and bury the fuse for a future Azura battlefield. After receiving Li Mu's promise, the girl became happy again. She happily held onto Li Mu's arm and turned back to stick out her tongue in the direction of the brothel. Along the way, Li Mu bought some snacks for Xiao Bai. He was about to return to the yamen when his gaze inadvertently swept across the front. His gaze suddenly froze. Two figures walked past on the street in front of him. The two of them, one old and one young, did not see Li Mu. Li Mu did not recognize the young man. His gaze swept past him and stopped on the old man. This was the first time Li Mu saw this old man, but his figure overlapped with a figure in Li Mu's memory. To be precise, it was the memory of the assassin that Li Mu had obtained from Madame Chu in the North County. This old man was the one who had hired the assassin to assassinate Li Mu in the North County. He followed behind the young man step by step. It was obvious that the young man was the leader. In this way, the mastermind behind the assassination in the North County was about to be revealed. In the Shendu Yamen, Li Mu reached out and swiped the void. The image of a young man appeared in the air. Wang Wu looked at the image and said in shock, "No way, boss. You just killed Zhou Chuchu and now you've provoked Zhou Qin?" Chapter 234. Mr. Mei had warned Li Mu to be careful of the Zhou family. Li Mu thought that the assassination in the North County should have been done by the Zhou family. It was not until today that he met the old man in the memory of the assassin that he finally locked onto the mastermind behind the scenes. Through Wang Wu, Li Mu confirmed the man's identity once again. Zhou Qin was Zhou Chu's elder brother, but he was not Zhou Ting's son. Among the four brothers of the Zhou family, Zhou Ting was the fourth. Zhou Qin was the only son of the third brother. Zhou Qin usually kept a low profile and was not as flamboyant as Zhou Chu. He also did not bully the people, so the people of Luoyang did not know much about him. The old man beside him was his bodyguard. The disciples of the big families in Luoyang all had bodyguards, and these bodyguards were the closest to them. The fact that the old man appeared in the killer's memory meant that the assassination in Beijun was most likely Zhou Chen's plan. At that time, Li Mu had just offended the old party. If something happened to him, the old party would be the first to be suspected. However, Li Mu did not know whether Zhou Qin had acted on his own, or whether the real mastermind of the Zhou family was involved. The killer was dead, and Li Mu could not accuse Zhou Qin with just his words alone. Moreover, because of him, the Zhou family had just lost a young disciple. If Li Mu pointed the finger at Zhou Qin now, it might completely enrage the Zhou family and bring about their intense revenge. However, the revenge for the assassination had to be taken. As long as he knew the mastermind behind it, he could take his time to plan what to do next. Li Mu walked to the front of the yamen and saw Zhang Chun walking in listlessly. Li Mu greeted him, "Sir, you're out of court?" Ever since he was promoted to Luoyang magistrate, Zhang Chun's rank had risen from 6th grade to 5th grade, and he was qualified to attend court. Although there were many 5th-rank officials in Luoyang and not everyone had the opportunity to attend court, the Luoyang yamen was different from the 6 yamens. Above them, there were assistant ministers, doctors, and minister counselors. If they had nothing to do, they could stay in the yamen. Zhang Chun was the only official in charge of the yamen. Unlike Li Mu, who could sleep as long as he wanted with Xiaobai in his arms, Zhang Chun had to wake up early every 3 days to prepare for the morning court. Li Mu replied, "Your Excellency left court today, so you're a bit late." Zhang Chun waved his hand and said, "Don't mention it. The quarrel in the court today was too intense." The guy behind this official almost sprayed his saliva all over this official's face. Li Mu asked curiously, "What's the matter?" Zhang Chun said, "It's all because of the academy. His Majesty thinks that almost all the officials in the 36 counties of the Great Zhou, including Luoyang, are from the academy. In the long run, it will be detrimental to the country. He wants to give up some of the positions of the officials and directly select them from the people. However, the officials are against it," Li Mu said. "That's good." Zhang Chun glanced at him and said, "What's good about it?" Before the academy, the morals and abilities of the officials in the imperial court were uneven. Many untalented and incompetent people could also hold important positions in the imperial court. The people suffered unspeakably. After the academy, the quality of the officials has greatly improved. If the selection of officials goes back to the old days, won't the people suffer that kind of pain again? It seemed that Zhang Chun also supported the academy. Li Mu asked, "Your Excellency, are you also from the academy?" Hearing this, Zhang Chun's face showed a proud expression. He said, "When I was young, I studied in the Myriad Scroll Academy. After I finished my studies in the academy, I became the county magistrate of Yangqiu." Li Mu asked, "Before the academy, the people suffered unspeakably. After the academy, the people's lives became better?" Zhang Chun's lips moved, but he found that he could not answer Li Mu. Before Emperor Wen, after the golden age of Emperor Wu, the counties were no longer troubled by the demons and ghosts. However, the people's lives did not seem to be better. After the death of Emperor Wen, the quality of the officials was greatly improved. Today, the people should be living a better life. However, as far as he knew, the people of the 36 counties of Great Zhou were far from living in peace and contentment. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "Do you mean that Emperor Wen was wrong?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Emperor Wen was not wrong. However, the decrees of Emperor Wen's time are not necessarily suitable for the present. During Emperor Wen's time, the officials in the imperial court were both good and bad. There was a big flaw in the way the imperial court chose officials. Emperor Wen's decisive reform led to the famous rule of Emperor Wen. At that time, the academy was beneficial to improving the ecology of the imperial court. But it's different now. The chaos of the imperial court during Emperor Wen's time has long disappeared. The students of the academy have almost monopolized the imperial court. The officials are divided into camps based on the academy. They form cliques and protect each other. The decrees of Emperor Wen's time are no longer suitable for the current imperial court." Zhang Chun looked at him with a strange expression and said, "I really should let you attend the imperial court. If you were there in the morning, there would not be no one to speak for Her Majesty." Li Mu was very sure that many people in the imperial court must have seen what he saw. However, they were all from the academy. If they agreed with the empress, wouldn't they be standing on the opposite side of the academy? They already belonged to their own camp. Naturally, they would not betray their own camp. Moreover, with the power and influence of the academy, even the new party and the old party had to rely on it. Who in the imperial court dared to oppose the academy? Li Mu could imagine the scene of Her Majesty being opposed by the officials in the morning court. Unfortunately, he was only a minor official and was not even qualified to defend her. Li Mu did not know much about the academy. After calling Wang Wu, he had a better understanding of the academy. There were 4 great academies in the divine capital. They were called Baichuan, Qingyun, Wanwen, and Bailu. They started during the reign of Emperor Wen and had been passed down for more than 100 years. Among the 4 great academies, Bailu Academy was different from the other 3. It was the only academy that was directly under the Ministry of War. The dean of Bailu Academy was the Minister of War. The purpose of Bailu Academy's existence was to defend against foreign enemies. It had never been involved in political struggles. Almost all the students from Bailu Academy would not stay in the divine capital. They needed to go to the borders of the Great Zhou to protect the border counties and prevent the neighboring countries, the Demon Country, the Ghost Region, and the Dragon Clan from invading. Fortunately, after the Martial Emperor, the Great Zhou had become the most powerful country in the ancestral land. Most of the surrounding countries respected the Great Zhou. Those who did not respect the Great Zhou as their sovereign country did not dare to offend the Great Zhou. The Demon Country and the Ghost Region had always been in a state of internal strife. They did not pose much of a threat to the Great Zhou for the time being. Although the Dragon Clan was powerful, they lived in the sea for a long time and rarely appeared on the mainland. The current situation of the Great Zhou was more of an internal problem than an external one. Wanwan Academy focused on teaching the concept of governance and governance. Many of the students from Wanwan Academy did not know how to cultivate, but they all had unique views on how to govern a country. After graduating from the academy, those who were more capable would stay in the divine capital to take up positions. Those who were less capable would be sent to other places to train. Qingyun Academy and Baichuan Academy focused more on cultivation. Those who studied in these 2 academies were all students with a certain level of cultivation talent. After leaving the academy, they would either take up important positions in the divine capital or guard a county. They had the brightest future. There were 36 counties in the Great Zhou, and at least 90 of them came from these 2 academies. There were 106 county governors, county ministers, and county lieutenants. Of course, the academies did not belong to any political party. In terms of cohesion, they were naturally not as united as the new party or the old party. However, the status of the academies was extraordinary. The students who graduated from the academies all had a deep sense of belonging to the academies. Perhaps they were dissatisfied with the academies when they were studying, but they would never allow outsiders to trample on the dignity of the academies. Whether it was in the divine capital or in the various counties, officials who came from the same academy would naturally have a close relationship. Everything was shown in the imperial court, and they would form a cohesive group. The imperial palace. It was already late at night. The empress stood in the empty palace. She no longer looked dignified in front of others. There was still anger on her face. She was angry about what happened in the imperial court. She looked around, trying to find someone to talk to and vent her frustrations. However, she could not find anyone. In fact, since she was forced to take this position 3 years ago, there was no one she could talk to. That person was right. Sitting in this position, she would slowly lose her family and friends. No one would reveal their true feelings to her. Her parents called her Her Majesty and wanted her to pass the throne to a descendant of the Zhou family. Her former friends only had respect and fear for her now. She had gotten everything that others wanted, but she had lost everything that she wanted. She walked out of the palace and looked up at the sky. Suddenly she thought of someone. The Li residence. Li Mu was sleeping soundly with Xiao Bai in his arms. Suddenly, white mist filled his vision. A familiar figure appeared in front of him. Li Mu had not seen his other personality for a long time. When he saw her again, he felt a sense of familiarity. He waved at her and said, Long time no see. Although the interaction between the two personalities was not very pleasant in the beginning, she did not appear every day. She also did not torture Li Mu every time she appeared. Li Mu was not as afraid of her as he was in the beginning. The beautiful woman's expression was a little ugly. She did not pay attention to Li Mu. Li Mu's heart skipped a beat. He wondered if she was on her period. Would her inner demons be on their period? In order to prevent her from venting her anger on him, Li Mu prepared to slip away. The next moment, the scenery in front of him changed. The two of them appeared at the peak of a mountain. There was a pavilion at the peak of the mountain. At this moment, the two of them were sitting in the pavilion. There were a few exquisite dishes in front of them. The aroma of the dishes made Li Mu swallow a mouthful of saliva. He complained in his heart. Whose dream was this? Why was her control of the dream more skillful than his? The surrounding scenery was so real. Li Mu could hear the birds, smell the fragrance of flowers, and even feel the mountain breeze blowing on his face. The few dishes in front of him were so delicious that Li Mu began to wonder whether this was a dream or reality. Legend has it that the powerhouses of the upper realm can use a kind of dream transference ability. They can use their consciousness to invade other people's dreams and freely weave the content of the dream. The person who was transferred by the dream would not be able to distinguish between the dream and reality. They would even be trapped in it forever. Li Mu looked around and could not help but sigh. The legendary dream transference technique was just like this, right? Li Mu looked at the woman opposite him and asked, "Are you in a bad mood?" The woman did not answer, but the answer was written on her face. Li Mu did not know why a heart demon would be in a bad mood. He poured a cup of wine for the two of them and said, "Since you are in a bad mood, I will accompany you to drink a few cups." He gulped down the wine in his cup and sighed softly. The woman looked at him and asked, "What are you sighing for?" There was nothing to hide from his other self. Li Mu said leisurely, "Unfortunately, I am not Lord Jiang. Otherwise, in today's morning court, I would not have let His Majesty face the officials alone." The woman raised her eyebrows, looked at Li Mu and said, "What's so good about that woman? She is just a rebel who seized power and stole the country. Is it worth it for you to protect her like this?" Bang! Li Mu slammed the wine cup on the stone table, stood up abruptly and said impolitely, "If you disrespect His Majesty again, I will go back. You can drink this wine alone." The mouth of the person who received it was soft. After receiving so many benefits from the Empress, Li Mu could not protect her in the court. If he could not even protect her in the dream, then the next time he received benefits from the Empress, his conscience would not be at ease. The woman did not expect that this sentence would anger Li Mu. Her gaze swept over him, and she lowered her head and said, "Well, I will not speak ill of her. Sit down." Chapter 235. Li Mu didn't know what other people's inner demons were like, but his seemed to be somewhat different. She obviously didn't have much desire to erode Li Mu's consciousness and occupy his body. Instead, she was not very friendly to the Empress. Was it because of jealousy? Speaking of which, Li Mu was also a little jealous of the Empress at first. After all, she was young and had a high position. She had stepped into the upper realm before the age of 30. Who wouldn't be envious of her? Could it be that the birth of this woman was due to Li Mu's jealousy? Cultivation was really dangerous at every step. Even a small emotion in the heart could be infinitely magnified. The inner demons had no substance. If he wanted to overcome or eliminate them, he had to rely on his inner cultivation. The beautiful woman took a sip of wine and asked, "You have never met her. Why are you so protective of her?" Li Mu said, "Your Majesty treats me sincerely, so I should treat Your Majesty sincerely. Moreover, although Your Majesty is a woman, compared to the previous emperors of the Great Zhou, her wisdom and virtue should be at the forefront." The North County girl died unjustly, and the court covered up a corrupt official. Your Majesty upheld justice for her. The Academy has become a chronic disease of the Great Zhou, and the students of the Academy have formed cliques for selfish interests and control the court. No one in the court dares to mention it. Only Your Majesty is aggressive and brave to reform. Isn't such a person worthy of respect and protection? After Li Mu finished speaking, he raised his head and drank a glass of wine, secretly feeling pity in his heart. If these words were heard by the Empress, she might be happy and reward him with some treasures. Unfortunately, he didn't even have the chance to see the Empress and could only talk to himself in his dreams. The woman took a deep look at Li Mu and didn't say anything in the end. She drank alone. Although Li Mu was curious, he didn't ask much. A personality with self-consciousness, to some extent, was a completely different person. They had their own fantasy life and identity. Li Mu had seen a movie before, in which the protagonist had 10 personalities with different identities. Their gender, age, and identity were different, and between the different personalities, they would kill each other. Judging from the current situation, Li Mu and his other self were getting along quite well. Even if she wanted to harm Li Mu could still exit the dream at any time. She didn't seem to have such thoughts either. When he woke up from his dream, Li Mu was still reminiscing about the delicious food in his dream. Unfortunately, a dream was still a dream. When he woke up, he couldn't recall the taste of those delicacies. After washing up and eating breakfast, he went to the yamen with Xiao Bai. Li Mu was about to go out on patrol when he saw Mr. Mei and 2 other people outside the government office. Li Mu stepped forward and asked, "Sister Mei, what's the matter?" Mr. Mei said, "Jianghu County offered a batch of tribute pears yesterday. His Majesty asked me to give you a box." Li Mu was a little flattered. Although it was just a box of pears, it represented His Majesty the Empress's intentions. It meant that she would think of him for such a small matter. During the transportation of this kind of tribute, Fulu would be stuck on the box. Even if it was transported to Chengdu, it would be no different from freshly picked ones. Li Mu took one for himself and gave one to Xiao Bai. He took a bite of the tribute pear and found that the pear skin was thin, juicy, and sweet. It was worthy of being chosen as a tribute pear. Mr. Mei said, "If there's nothing else, I'll go back to the palace first." Li Mu suddenly stopped her and asked, "Sister Mei, what should I do if I encounter an inner demon in the process of cultivation?" Li Mu knew very little about inner demons. Even Thousand Illusions Shangren was not omniscient. Faced with this kind of thing that he had never encountered in his cultivation, Li Mu did not know how to deal with it for a moment. Although Mr. Mei's cultivation was not as high as Thousand Illusions Shangren's, she was by the Empress's side and must have seen many things. Perhaps she could explain to Li Mu. "Inner demon?" Mr. Mei frowned and asked, "You encountered an inner demon?" Li Mu nodded. Mr. Mei continued to ask, "What kind of inner demon?" Li Mu described, "Sometimes I dream of a woman." Mr. Mei glanced at him. "Isn't it normal to dream of a woman?" Li Mu explained, "It's not what you think. It's a strange woman. I've dreamed of her more than once. She seems to have independent thoughts and can even control my dreams. More than once, independent thoughts?" Mr. Mei frowned and asked, "Can she control your body?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "That won't happen." "That's strange." Mr. Mei said in surprise, "Once an inner demon of this level appears, it will definitely fight for control of the body. If it wins, it will completely control the original body. If it loses, its consciousness will be destroyed. It's very rare for 2 consciousnesses to coexist." Li Mu asked, "In other words, it's possible for such a situation to exist?" Mr. Mei nodded and said, "As far as I know, there are very few people who have more than 2 consciousnesses coexisting in their bodies. Most of the time, his body is dominated by the main consciousness, but when he encounters a life and death crisis, the other consciousness will awaken. This kind of second consciousness can sometimes be more terrifying than the main consciousness." Li Mu felt that he was in this situation as Mr. Mei said. In his dreams, the woman could turn the tables and easily beat Li Mu. Her strength was very terrifying. Although the 2 of them could coexist peacefully for the time being, no one could say for sure what would happen in the future. Li Mu asked, "How do I get rid of this kind of inner demon?" Mr. Mei shook his head and said, "You can only rely on yourself to defeat the inner demon. When your consciousness is strong enough, you can easily erase the consciousness of the inner demon." She looked at Li Mu and asked, What does your inner demon look like? Li Mu reached out and swiped in the air. A woman's shadow appeared in the air. This was a small spell that could be mastered in the Jushen stage. It was a weakened version of the art of black light. The art of black light of the cultivators in Dongxian could turn stillness into motion and appear in real time. It could surpass the power of heaven and earth and reappear the past that had already happened. It was said that the most powerful cultivators in the ninth realm could even see the future temporarily through this spell. As for whether it was true or not, Li Mu didn't know. Mr. Mei looked at the woman. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes and his mouth opened slightly. Li Mu saw the change in her expression and had a bad feeling. He asked, What's wrong? Mr. Mei coughed and his expression returned to normal. He asked, when did you get this inner demon? Li Mu thought for a moment and said, I think it was the night when His Majesty abolished the substitutes in silver. I met her for the first time in my dream. She tied me up and whipped me. Thinking of what happened in his dream that night, Li Mu still felt a bit aggrieved. Hearing this, Mr. Mei's expression was very strange. It seemed like he wanted to laugh but was trying hard to hold it in. A few black lines appeared on Li Mu's forehead as he asked, Are you laughing at me? Mr. Mei shook his head and said, No, Seeing Li Mu's serious face, she coughed and said, I'm not laughing at you. I just thought of something funny. She put one hand on Li Mu's shoulder and the other hand on her stomach. After laughing, she said, panting, Don't worry. There are all kinds of strange things on the road of cultivation. The inner demon isn't all bad. She doesn't want to take over your body. Just think of it as a dream. Isn't it good to go on dates with a beautiful woman in your dreams? Li Mu asked suspiciously, Is it really okay? Mr. Mei patted him on the shoulder and said, Don't worry. It's okay. Judging from Mr. Mei's tone, she didn't seem to be lying to Li Mu or comforting Li Mu. For now, Li Mu didn't feel that the woman was a threat to him. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Mr. Mei said, Haven't you always wanted to know about His Majesty? Since we're free now, I'll tell you. When Li Mu heard this, he was instantly interested. Mr. Mei said, Since you're already His Majesty's man, there's something you need to know. Li Mu asked, What's the matter? Mr. Mei said, People say that His Majesty stole the Emperor's qi from the ancestral temple and used it to transcend and take over the world. You think so too, don't you? Li Mu asked, Is there more to it than meets the eye? Mr. Mei said, It's true that His Majesty got the Emperor's qi, but he didn't do it willingly. When he married the former crown prince, became the empress, and obtained the Emperor's qi, it was all part of the Zhou family's scheme. Li Mu really didn't know that there was such an inside story. He continued to listen to Mr. Mei. The Emperor's qi is condensed from the psyche power of the people of the Great Zhou. The 36 counties of the Great Zhou collect the psyche power of the people through the ancestral temple and gather it in the ancestral temple. It will gradually nurture a strand of Emperor's qi. Obtaining this Emperor's qi can allow mortals to transcend. In the past, it would be passed to the Emperor to ensure the continuation of the Great Zhou dynasty. There were shortcuts to cultivation. Some shortcuts could even allow one to reach the sky in one step. Xiao Yu, with the body of a mortal, was able to move heaven and earth and advance 5 realms in a row. The methods of the royal family of the Great Zhou were obviously more brilliant. They used the psyche power of hundreds of millions of people to cultivate, so that there would always be a powerhouse of the upper realm in the royal family to ensure the continuation of imperial power. However, during the last change of imperial power, this strand of Emperor's qi was obtained by an outsider, causing the Xiao royal family to lose their opportunity. It was no wonder that Her Majesty could succeed the throne so smoothly. After Emperor Wen, the Great Zhou showed signs of decline. The people's sentiment decreased year by year. The last strand of Emperor's qi was formed after 2 generations of emperors. In other words, the Xiao royal family had not produced a powerhouse of the upper realm for decades. The cultivation of the previous 2 emperors stopped at Dongxian. If there was no powerhouse to guard the country, they would not be able to intimidate the surrounding countries, not to mention the Yao nation and the Ghost realm. Even if the Xiao clan was unwilling, they could only temporarily let the empress succeed the throne. It was precisely because the Zhou family understood this that they were able to take advantage of the Xiao clan. Mr. Mei looked at Li Mu and said, "You are one of Her Majesty's people. I don't want you to misunderstand Her Majesty like others." Li Mu nodded and said solemnly, "I understand." Mr. Mei asked, "Besides these, do you have anything else you want to ask?" Li Mu thought for a while and asked, "It is said that the former crown prince likes men and that he and Her Majesty are only husband and wife on the surface. Is that true?" Chapter 236. Bang. As soon as Li Mu finished speaking, Mr. Mei hit him on the head. Mr. Mei glared at him and said, "Didn't I tell you not to criticize Her Majesty? If other internal guards heard you, you would be hung up and beaten." Li Mu rubbed his head and said, "Isn't it right in front of you?" Mr. Mei snorted and said, "Not even in front of me." Li Mu shook his head and said, Okay, I won't ask any more." Gossiping was human nature. The higher a person's status was, the more people would gossip about them. Not only Li Mu, but many people in Luoyang were gossiping about this. "Okay, I've delivered Her Majesty's reward. I'm going back to the palace." Mr. Mei looked at him angrily and said, "Her Majesty is as pure as ice and as pure as jade. Don't talk about her behind her back. Not only can you not talk about her, but you can't let others talk about her either." Li Mu stood up straight and said seriously, "Yes, Your Majesty." He called her sister Mei all the time, and it was not in vain. In the end, she answered Li Mu indirectly to satisfy his gossiping. A pure as ice and as pure as jade solved Li Mu's doubts. The fire of gossip was extinguished. Li Mu saw Zhang Chun standing at the door of the side hall and asked, "Sir, do you want to eat a pear? This pear is very sweet. It's the tribute pear given by Her Majesty." Zhang Chun walked out and asked, "What did you do? Why did Her Majesty suddenly reward you?" Li Mu said, "Nothing. Maybe there are too many tribute pears in Jianghu County and Her Majesty can't finish them all." Hearing this, Zhang Chun looked at Li Mu and wanted to spit at him. Even if Her Majesty could not finish the tribute pears and wanted to reward the officials, there was no reason for her to skip over him, the magistrate of Luoyang, and reward the arrestor of Luoyang. Moreover, Her Majesty rewarding a house and a box of pears were two completely different things. Because of their meritorious service, His Majesty had rewarded many people with residences. Although the value of this box of pears was very low and could not be compared to the official residence, it represented the emperor's heart. This meant that His Majesty still had Li Mu in his heart. Even if he did not make any contributions, His Majesty might still think of him when he woke up, slept, or ate. What kind of heavenly grace was this? Zhang Chun took a pear and took a bite. "What kind of tribute pear is this? It's so sour." He put the pear in his mouth, grabbed 2 more pears from the box with both hands and left. Xiao Bai chewed on the pear and said, "This pear is obviously very sweet. It's not sour at all, Li Mu. Maybe he just happened to pick a sour one." He waved his hand at Wang Wu at the door and said, "These are the tribute pears bestowed by His Majesty. Take them and distribute them among your brothers." It was just a box of tribute pears, but it was a sharp weapon to win people's hearts. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he could win over a wave of people's hearts for himself and Her Majesty. Mr. Mei was right. Many people criticized the process of the Empress seizing the throne. Even most of the officials in Great Zhou did not like to see a woman become the Empress. Li Mu said to the people who had been summoned by Wang Wu, "After eating, go out and patrol. If you find any illegal behavior that you can't handle, come to me." The constables each took a pear and said to Li Mu, "Thank you, boss." Li Mu waved his hand. "This is a reward from Her Majesty. If you want to thank someone, thank Her Majesty." Imperial Palace. Chang'e Hall. In the void of the hall, there was a picture quietly flowing. The young female official snorted and said, "This person is rude to Her Majesty again. Why don't we take him to the internal guards and teach him a good lesson?" Mr. Mei came in from outside the hall. Seeing the scene of the Luoyang government and hearing the young female official's words, he already realized what had happened. He said, "Your Majesty, although Li Mu's words are a bit presumptuous, he is absolutely loyal to Your Majesty. He always protects your majesty and thinks that your majesty. The young female official said with a cold face, if we don't teach him a good lesson this time, who knows what other offensive words he will say to your majesty in the future. The empress looked calm, as if she was not angry at all. She just said, Mei Wei, send him another box of tribute pears tomorrow. Mr. Mei bowed and said, yes, your majesty. The young female official said angrily, your majesty. Your majesty will leave first. Mr. Mei took her hand and pulled her out of the hall. The young female official shook off his hand and said unhappily, he was disrespectful to your majesty. Why are you always protecting him? Mr. Mei said to her, if your majesty wants to punish him, she will. We don't have to do anything about it. The young female official said angrily, what's so good about him? He was disrespectful to your majesty. You protect him, and your majesty is so tolerant of him. Not only did she give him the tribute pears that your majesty likes to eat, but she also used the dark light technique to look at him. Her chest heaved up and down. Obviously, she was very angry. For someone like her who worshipped the empress, it was hard for her to accept all this. Shoo! Mr. Mei made a shushing gesture and said, it's because he was disrespectful to your majesty that your majesty treats him differently from others. The young female official frowned. Obviously, she didn't understand what he meant. Mr. Mei explained, you're still young. There are some things that you don't understand. It's lonely at the top. When your majesty is in that position, everyone, including us, respects and fears her. After a long time, your majesty will get tired. Sometimes what she needs is someone who disrespects her. The young female official said, what kind of twisted logic is that? Mr. Mei shook his head and said, your majesty didn't want to be in this position. She's much lonelier than we thought. In front of us, she only shows one side, but in fact, the side that she hides is the real her. Li Mu walked out of the government office. He looked up at the sky and scratched his head in confusion. Since just now, he had a strange feeling that someone was spying on him in the dark. This feeling came and went. Li Mu searched for a long time, but he couldn't find the source. In this situation, either he had an illusion, or the spying person's cultivation was much higher than his and used a high-level magic like the art of mystic light. The latter was unlikely. Li Mu had the jade pendant given to him by the empress. It could isolate heaven's secrets, block the calculations of transcendent cultivators, and also block the art of mystic light. After leaving the government office, this feeling disappeared completely. He patrolled the government office with Xiaobai. At night, when he was sitting cross-legged on the bed to cultivate, sleepiness suddenly attacked him. Li Mu had experienced this feeling of sleepiness for no reason several times. He already knew what would happen next. Sure enough, after a mist appeared in front of him, the woman's figure appeared in front of Li Mu. She stretched out her hands, and a whip appeared in her hands. It was a whip that Li Mu hadn't seen for a long time. Li Mu's eyelids twitched, and his expression changed greatly. He immediately said, "What do you want?" The woman said indifferently, "Nothing, I just want to exchange pointers with you." "What exchange?" It was clearly a one-sided trampling. Li Mu quickly stretched out his hand and said, "Stop, even if you want to exchange pointers, you don't have to use force. We can exchange pointers." The woman glanced at him and asked, "What kind of grammar?" Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "Do you know how to play Go?" The woman said, "I know a little about the rules." Li Mu closed his eyes and meditated. A stone table and 2 stone chairs appeared in front of them. A chessboard was carved on the stone table, and next to the chessboard was a chessboard. Li Mu picked up a black piece and placed it in the corner of the chessboard. He immediately said, "It's your turn." In the dream, Li Mu couldn't beat her. He could only make a prompt decision and make the decision for her. Although Li Mu's Go skills weren't high, it was still easy for him to beat a rookie who knew a little about the rules. The woman glanced at Li Mu, picked up the white piece and placed it in another place. Li Mu sighed in relief. He suspected that today was a special day for her every month. Fortunately, he was quick-witted and made a prompt decision to avoid being trampled on by her. After a moment, the woman placed a single word and said to Li Mu, "You lost." Li Mu stared blankly at the chessboard. Only then did he realize that what she said about knowing a little about the rules and what he understood were not the same at all. The woman looked at him and shook her head. It's boring to exchange pointers. Let's exchange pointers. Wait. Li Mu stretched out his hand again and said, one game doesn't mean anything. We'll win 2 out of 3 games. He closed his eyes and concentrated. The chessboard on the table suddenly changed, and the boundary between Chu and Han appeared. The woman looked at the strange chessboard and asked, what is this? Chinese chess. There was no such thing as Chinese chess in this world. Li Mu smiled and said, if you don't know how, I can teach you. The woman learned very quickly. Li Mu only explained the rules of Chinese chess to her once, and she was already able to move. Of course, after 20 moves, she lost to Li Mu. Li Mu sighed in relief and clasped his fist. Thank you for letting me win. I admit it. The woman didn't even raise her head. She rearranged the pieces and said, again. Although it was a bit shameless to attack her weakness with his strength, Li Mu could only be shameless once in order to not be trampled on. This time, the woman played very slowly. After 30 moves, Li Mu frowned. He didn't expect her to learn so quickly. If this continued, he was afraid that he would lose this game. He picked up a chess piece, thought for a moment, and ate one of her pieces. The woman looked at him and asked, why can your pawn take 2 moves? Li Mu explained, you don't know, right? This pawn is an elite. It can take 2 moves. The woman didn't say anything and continued playing. Li Mu picked up a chess piece and ate another one of her pieces. The woman frowned. Why does your horse move, but not, son? Li Mu explained, this is only a fine horse. It can move, The woman didn't say anything and moved the chess piece again. Li Mu's carriage turned and ate her piece. She looked up at Li Mu and asked, why doesn't your carriage go in a straight line? Li Mu smiled and asked, isn't it common knowledge that a carriage can turn? The woman was silent for a moment. She stretched out her hand and the whip appeared again. She stood up and looked at Li Mu. Show your weapon. Chapter 237. During breakfast, Xiaobai saw Li Mu's tired face and asked, Savior, did you not sleep well last night? Li Mu said listlessly, I'm fine. I just had a nightmare last night. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the ocean, even if it was a woman he imagined. Li Mu did not know how he had offended her. She was fine last night, but then she turned hostile again and tormented Li Mu for most of the night. If it was just a night without sleep, it was nothing to Li Mu now. He could still be energetic if he did not sleep for 10 days or half a month. However, excessive mental exhaustion in the dream would also affect reality. Last night, he had fought more than 300 rounds with the inner demon. He had even mastered the use of the mantra a lot. Although he was a little mentally exhausted, he had gained a lot. After breakfast, he returned to the yamen with Xiaobai. Li Mu learned from Wang Wu that the Empress had sent another box of tribute pears early in the morning. Li Mu was a little confused. How did the Empress know that he liked pears? He was actually a little reluctant to share the tribute pears with everyone yesterday. He did not need to share this box of pears with them. He and Xiaobai would take it home to eat at night. After that, he returned to his room, changed into his official uniform, and went out to patrol while collecting psychokinesis. Cultivation after the omnipotent realm was much harder than he had imagined. Li Qing did not take long to advance from the omnipotent realm to the omnipotent realm. Although her talent was not as good as Li Mu's, she had already built a solid foundation after more than 10 years of accumulation. Li Mu adjusted his train of thought. After experiencing the rapid advancement, he was indeed a little impatient for success during this period of time. Although there were shortcuts in cultivation, pursuing them too much would also create hidden dangers for oneself. If Li Mu's mana was cultivated step by step like Li Qing, the inner demon would not have a chance to invade at all. He felt that his cultivation was slow, but it was actually only compared to before. In reality, to be able to enter the 3rd realm of cultivation at such a young age was definitely not slow. Moreover, he had not been cultivating for long. Most cultivators would cultivate their entire lives and only reach the omnipotent realm. Li Mu originally wanted Xiaobai to stay in the yamen to cultivate, but she had to follow Li Mu on patrol. Li Mu did not know whether she simply wanted to stick to him or to be Lu Hanyan's spy. She wanted to follow Li Mu and keep an eye on him so that he did not flirt with other women. Li Mu had always been strictly abiding by Lu Hanyan's promise. In the 2 months in the Immortal's capital, apart from Xiao, Mr. May do not count. Although plum blossoms were flowers, Mr. May did not count. If she were a few years older, she would be old enough to be Li Mu's mother. After leaving the yamen, Li Mu walked along the main street, patrolling the area. The Immortal's capital was divided into districts called markets by the crisscrossing streets. So far, Li Mu had only been to less than 30% of the markets. There was no strict distinction between markets. Each market was both a residential area and a commercial area. In a market, residential, living, and entertainment functions were available. It could satisfy the daily needs of most people. These markets had different functions. Most of them were for the common people to live in, while the rest had their own functions. For example, the South Court and North Court, which occupied more than 10 markets, were for the rich and powerful. They were close to the palace and had the best location. The scenery was beautiful and the environment was quiet. There were also some high-end markets that were for the entertainment of the rich and powerful. Ordinary people could not afford them. Some high-end brothels, music halls, dance halls, and restaurants would only appear in these markets. Different from other markets, the brothels here wouldn't have brothels and girls standing at the entrance to solicit customers. When the customers entered, they wouldn't get straight to the point. They would usually talk about life and dreams first, which would take a longer time and cost more money. As for music halls and dance halls, they were places where the cultured gathered. In the Immortal's capital, those who were qualified to be cultured were the rich. Li Mu heard this from Wang Wu. It was said that in some brothels, besides human women, there were also demons and ghosts. As long as one had enough money, they could satisfy all kinds of people's hobbies. The Immortal's capital was not a one-sided place. To some people, it was hell, but to others, it was heaven. The peaceful market that Li Mu and Xiao Bai were in was a high-end market that gathered brothels, music halls, dance halls, and restaurants. There were not many ordinary people on the streets. There was an endless stream of carriages passing by. Those who passed by were either the rich and powerful or the young officials. The constables of the Immortal's capital liked this kind of market very much. This was because those who came in and out of these markets were all people of status. Many of them thought that they were cultured. This made these markets more orderly. There were very few cases, so there was no need to pay too much attention to them. Since he could not obtain more psyche power here, Li Mu still wanted to take root among the ordinary people. Just as he was about to leave with Xiao Bai, he heard a melodious tune. Li Mu stopped and stood on the street, listening carefully. This was not the first time Li Mu had heard this tune. When he was in the northern region, Lu Hanyan often played it for him. When he heard this tune, Li Mu began to miss her. Xiao Bai hugged her sword and listened for a while. She said, "Sister Lu played this tune before." Li Mu looked in the direction of the music. His gaze finally stopped in front of a music hall called Great Music Hall. Li Mu had heard this name many times from Lu Hanyan. When she was young, she was sold to a music hall by her parents. The name of the music hall was Great Music Hall. That was where she and Wan Wan grew up. They had lived there for more than 10 years. Standing in front of the Great Music Hall, Li Mu suddenly wanted to go in and see the place where they used to live. He walked into the music hall. A beautiful girl came up to him and asked, "Do you want to listen to music?" Li Mu asked, "How many great music halls are there in the Immortal's capital?" The girl was stunned for a moment. Then she said, "Only one." There was only one great music hall in the Immortal's capital. Li Mu and Xiao Bai could not be wrong. He smiled at the girl and said, "Let's listen to music." The girl smiled and asked, "Do you have a musician you like? Would you like a musician to play for you in the private room or in the hall with the other guests?" Li Mu's family owned a music hall. Naturally, he was not unfamiliar with the business model here. When they arrived at the music hall, The guests could listen to music in the hall according to the music hall's arrangement. They could also choose one or several musicians to play for them in the private room. Of course, the latter was more expensive. It usually cost dozens of taels of silver. Sitting in the hall and listening to music for 2 hours would cost at most a few taels of silver. An ordinary family's annual expenses were only 10 taels of silver. The expenses here were astronomical for ordinary people. Of course, to the rich people in the Immortal's capital, this was nothing. Li Mu certainly would not spend dozens of taels of silver to listen to a song. He decisively chose the latter. The girl smiled and said, "Please follow me." She led the two of them through a screen and into a hall. The music hall would arrange a fixed number of songs every day and charge according to the seats. The closer to the musicians, the more expensive the seats were. The seats in the back corner were the cheapest. Li Mu and Xiao Bai chose a seat in the middle. They ordered a pot of tea and a stack of pastries and preserved fruits. They sat in their seats and waited quietly. There were not many guests in the hall. There were only about a dozen of them. They all had extraordinary auras. Li Mu did not know any of them. He only knew a few of the children of the officials in the Immortal's capital. He did not know most of them. After all, many officials were very strict with their children. They would not let them run amok in the Immortal's capital. Li Mu naturally did not have the chance to know them. He looked at the stage in front of him. Not long ago, Lu Hanyan should have been there. He worked hard every day to save enough money for her freedom. Then he left the Immortal's capital and came to the North County, where he met Li Mu. The musicians had not yet gone on stage and the performance had not started. The guests below the stage occasionally chatted with each other. Miss Yinin's skills are getting better and better. Listening to her play is a great enjoyment in life. Miss Yinin has improved a lot in the past half year. Many people are here for her. Ever since Miss Hanyan left, the Great Music Bar has been promoting Miss Yinin. In half a year, she became the star of the Great Music Bar. Miss Han Yen is worthy of being the #1 musician in the Immortal's capital. Unfortunately, she suddenly disappeared a year ago and no one knows where she went. I also miss Miss Han Yen. Li Mu drank his tea. He did not expect to hear Lu Hanyan's name from these people. Wan Wan said that she was proficient in all kinds of musical instruments and was very famous in the Immortal's capital. It was not an exaggeration at all. Lu Hanyan had never bragged about this. Li Mu also only knew about it now. Not long after, a woman hugged a Guqin and walked up to the stage. The discussions below gradually stopped. Jing. When the sound of the Guqin entered their ears, their minds couldn't help but be shaken. Li Mu looked at the woman on the stage and smiled. Although it was his first time meeting Miss Yinin, he had heard about her many times from Lu Hanyan. This caused Li Mu to feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity even though it was his first time meeting her. In the music bar, there were many small groups. Yinin and Lu Hanyan were close like sisters. Li Mu looked at her as if she was his sister-in-law. After the song ended, the woman on the stage stood up and bowed to the guests below. She said gently, "Thank you for coming. Yinin will take her leave." She walked down the stage and was about to leave with her Guqin. A young man sitting in the front row suddenly stood up and said, "Miss Yinin, I am from the 100 Rivers Academy. I have admired you for a long time. I hope you can give me a chance." Yinin hugged her Guqin and took 2 steps back. She apologized, "Young master, I am sorry. Yinin's status is lowly. I am not worthy of you," the young man said. "I am not marrying you as my wife. You can be my concubine." Yinin shook her head and said, "I am sorry. Yinin has no plans to marry." The young man took a step forward and said, "What's so good about playing for others here? If you follow me, you will enjoy endless glory and wealth. Do you still need to suffer like this?" Yinin took 2 steps back and said hurriedly, "I like this place very much. I have no intention of leaving." A trace of anger appeared on the young man's face. He reached out and wanted to grab her wrist, but his shoulder was pressed down from behind. Li Mu used a little force and the young man was pulled behind him. The young man said angrily, "What are you doing?" Li Mu asked back, "What are you doing in broad daylight?" Li Mu's official uniform still had some effect. The young man said, I am pursuing Miss Inin. But is this against the law? Li Mu said, it is not against the law to pursue a girl. But if you force her when she is unwilling, it is different. The young man frowned. Just as he was about to say something, someone ran over to him and whispered something in his ear. The young man's face changed. He glanced at Li Mu, but didn't say anything and hurriedly left. Although he was in the academy, he had heard of the name Li Mu before. This was a complete lunatic who was not afraid of anything. Although he was not afraid of the constables of the Luoyang government, he did not want to provoke a lunatic. After the young man left, Miss Inin was relieved. She put down her guqin and bowed to Li Mu. She said gratefully, "Thank you for helping me out. It is my duty to protect the people of Luoyang." Li Mu smiled and looked at her. Moreover, Hanyan's friends are my friends. If you encounter any problems in the future, you can come to the Luoyang government to find me. Although Lu Hanyan said that he was not allowed to fool around in Luoyang, standing up for her good sister could not be considered as fooling around. Moreover, as a constable, Li Mu had the duty to protect the people of Luoyang. Hearing Lu Hanyan's name, Miss Inin was stunned. Then, she looked up at Li Mu and asked in surprise, "Sir, do you know Sister Lu? Where is she now? Is she okay?" Li Mu said, "She and Wanwan are in the North County. They are both fine." Hearing Wanwan's name, Inin did not have any doubts that the person in front of her knew Lu Hanyan. Her expression was a bit agitated and angry. She said, "She left without even saying goodbye. How can she be a good sister?" Lu Hanyan had mentioned this to Li Mu. Although her experience in the music house was a bit bumpy, she had made a few good friends in the past 10 years. She did not want to face the scene of parting. After redeeming herself, she left quietly with Wanwan without telling anyone. From Miss Inin's reaction, the feelings between them should be sincere. Hearing Lu Hanyan's news, Inin was clearly a little agitated. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. She wiped her eyes and said, "They left without saying anything. They made me worry for so long. They're two weak women. What if they encounter bad people?" Li Mu's lips curled up. The two of them were no longer weak women. One had a pure Yin body and the other had natural spirit eyes. They had countless treasures on them. Bad people were probably more afraid of meeting them. After a while, Inin looked up at Li Mu and asked curiously, "Sir, how do you know Sister Hanyan?" Li Mu explained, "I was transferred from the North County to the Divine Capital a month ago. Before that, I was with Hanyan and Wanwan in the North County." From his words, it seemed that he was very close to Sister Lu and Wanwan. Inin looked at Li Mu and asked curiously, "May I ask what is the relationship between Sir and Sister Hanyan?" Li Mu smiled and said, "She is my fiancée." Inin exclaimed and covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with surprise and shock. After she came back to her senses, she did not even care about her zither and quickly ran backstage. In the hall, there were still some guests who had not left. When they heard the conversation between the two, most of them were stunned. "No way, Miss Hanyan is his fiancée? How is that possible? He must be talking nonsense. Is he worthy of Lady Lu? A toad lusting after a swan's flesh. You look so what if you're pretty? Is Miss Lu such a superficial person?" Li Mu heard a clamor. These people looked at him with unkind eyes and there was a sour smell in the air. Soon, there were messy footsteps from backstage. Inin ran out with a few girls. Where is Sister Hanyan's husband? Hey, don't push me. Let me see first." A few girls ran out from backstage and surrounded Li Mu. They sized him up from head to toe. "He looks okay. He is worthy of Sister Hanyan. But he is a little young. He is at least 3 years younger than Sister Hanyan. Hey, a woman 3 years older than you. Age is not a problem." Inin coughed and said, "Be careful. Don't be rude to brother-in-law." One of the girls looked at Li Mu and said in disbelief, "Are you really Sister Hanyan's husband?" Li Mu said, "Not yet." The girl said, "How can you prove it?" Li Mu waved his hand and the images of Lu Hanyan and Wanwan appeared in front of them. "Ah, brother-in-law knows magic. It is Sister Hanyan and Wanwan." This little girl, why did her face become round again?" Is brother-in-law a cultivator? No one dares to pester Sister Hanyan anymore. Li Mu's move completely shocked the girls and confirmed his identity. They immediately became well-behaved in front of Li Mu. Hello, brother-in-law. I'm Miao Miao. I am Xin Xin. I am 16. Brother-in-law, just call me Little 7. Lu Hanyan had entered the music house very early. Some of the girls in the same batch as her had already left. Some of them had taken advantage of their youth to marry into rich families as concubines. Some had even become someone else's mistress. Her age and qualifications were very high in the music house. After coming to the music house, she had a few more sisters-in-law. Feeling their sincere feelings, Li Mu was also happy for Lu Hanyan. He smiled at the girls and said, Hanyan will come to the divine capital in about a year. You will be able to see her then. My name is Li Mu. I work in the divine capital. If you encounter any trouble, you can come to the divine capital to find me. Miao Miao's face was filled with doubt. She muttered, Li Mu. I seem to have heard this name before. Soon she recalled something. Yinin and the others were also shocked. Brother-in-law is Li Mu, the Li Mu who took care of those officials' children and caused a ruckus in the Ministry of Justice? Brother-in-law made the heavens strike Zhou Chuchu to death. He even scolded Assistant Minister Zhou in the Ministry of Justice. Oh my God, I was just watching the show outside the Ministry of Justice that day. Soon, the girls' eyes began to sparkle as they looked at Li Mu. For more than a month, the people living in the divine capital might not have seen Li Mu, but they had definitely heard of his name. He took care of those rich kids, caused a ruckus in the Ministry of Justice, forced some officials to change the law, and abolished the silver for crimes. He had fundamentally sought the well-being of the people. He had avenged the wronged and caused the wrath of the heavens to strike Zhou Chuchu to death. He had gotten rid of a great evil for the divine capital. Countless people had seen it with their own eyes. Although they had never seen him, they were already filled with admiration for him. Yinin's eyes widened. She looked at Li Mu and asked, Brother-in-law, are you really that Li Mu? Li Mu smiled. There is only one person called Li Mu in the divine capital. Wow, brother-in-law is so powerful. Let's see who dares to pester and bully us in the future. Little 7 and 16 were the youngest. They were only 16 or 17 years old. They jumped up happily and pulled Li Mu's arm. They cheered and said, We have a backer in the future. Xiaobai stood at the side and watched anxiously. However, these people were Sister Lu's friends, so she could only watch anxiously. Li Mu was not good at dealing with this kind of situation. He pulled his hands back and said, All right, I still have to go out and patrol. If you encounter any trouble, remember to find me at the government office. Li Mu had stayed in the music house for a while. He bid farewell to the girls and left the wonderful sound pavilion with Xiaobai. Brother-in-law, goodbye. Come here often to see us. We'll save the best spot for you. It's free. Yinin looked at his back and said, I didn't expect Sister Hanyan to have found a husband. I'm really happy for her, Little 7 said. Brother-in-law is really powerful. That day outside the Ministry of Justice, I heard him scolding Assistant Minister Zhou in front of the Ministry of Justice. That's the Zhou family. Other than brother-in-law, who in the divine capital would dare to offend the Zhou family, 16's face was filled with happiness. She said, Hee hee, it's good that brother-in-law is powerful. Let's see who dares to bully us in the future. Although the status of musicians and performers in the hearts of people was better than prostitutes who used their beauty to entertain people, they were still inferior. Although there were many officials and nobles who came to the music house to listen to music, there were only a few who really looked up to them. As musicians, it was common to be harassed when they went out to play. Among them, some guests would be polite and some guests would be overboard. Many of the musicians who were not famous had been molested. There were even musicians who were sullied by guests when they were playing for guests alone in the pavilion. However, that guest had a powerful background and the music house could only let it go. As musicians, they had no sense of security. In fact, they were very envious of Sister Hanyan who could control her own fate. At this time, Xin Xin suddenly thought of something and said, The female constable by brother-in-law's side is so beautiful. Even I can't help but like her, Meow Meow said. She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Even those clothes can't hide her beauty. How can Sister Hanyan be at ease with leaving such a girl by brother-in-law's side? Little Seven thought about it and said, brother-in-law is alone in the divine capital. We have to help Sister Hanyan keep an eye on him. We can't let other little vixens take brother-in-law away. Chapter 238. Ever since he lost to Li Mu in a game of chess, the woman in his dream flew into a rage out of humiliation and ravaged him. She had not appeared for several days. Her time of appearance was very irregular, and her emotions were also very complicated and changeable. Sometimes she was calm, and sometimes she was manic. This caused Li Mu to be alarmed even before he slept. However, this woman was not as scary as the description of the inner demon in the book. Even though Li Mu could not defeat her in his dream, his mastery of various Tao techniques and supernatural powers was becoming more and more refined. Mantras and abhijna could be improved gradually through daily practice. However, there was a limit to this improvement. When fighting with others, the situation could change in an instant. No matter how skilled one was in daily practice, it was inevitable that one would be flustered in a real battle. Actual combat was the best way to improve one's strength. However, actual combat meant danger. In reality, when one was fighting with one's life, all of one's previous efforts would be for naught if they failed once. In the past, Li Mu had Su He to teach him moves. Now that they were separated, Li Mu also lost an opponent who could train him. Until he met the woman in his dream. Dreams were illusory. No matter what happened in the dream, it would not affect reality. However, experience in fights of magical powers was really accumulating. He could completely use the inner demon as his own whetstone to help him increase his experience in fighting enemies. After thinking this through, Li Mu looked forward to her appearance. Unfortunately, his inner demon was different. Whether it appeared or not was completely a probability event. There was no rule to speak of. In the morning, he and Xiaobai patrolled more than a dozen markets and only mediated a few neighborhood disputes. The two of them ate outside. When they passed by the great music lane, they came in and sat for a while. Lu Hanyan's former sisters were very enthusiastic about Li Mu. Xiaobai looked at them nervously. Is Sister Hanyan still like before, only eating a little every day? One must have gained weight, right? Sister Hanyan said that she would open her own music lane in the future. Did she open it in the end? The few of them surrounded Li Mu and asked all sorts of questions about Lu Hanyan. Li Mu answered them one by one. Yinin said with some envy, I really envy Sister Hanyan. She is finally living the life she wants. Li Mu, if you want, that's fine too. Chaimi shook its head and said, after Sister Hanyan redeemed herself and left, the business was greatly affected. If we redeem ourselves now, it won't be so easy. The owner won't let us go so easily. Exine also said, we also can't earn as much money as Sister Hanyan. In order to redeem herself, she played for 12 hours a day. Little Seven bit her lips and finally said, I'll listen to brother-in-law. Under the lead of Li Mu and Xiaobai, a group of people walked out of Great Music Lane and went to the Ministry of Justice. After a while, a middle-aged woman ran out of Great Music Lane and said in fear, It's over, it's over. These ignorant girls want to kill me. As a constable, Li Mu's duty was to clean up all the injustices in the Luoyang. Even if Little Seven wasn't Lu Hanyan's sister, he wouldn't sit by and do nothing. Moreover, Lu Hanyan's sister was his sister. Otherwise, when she came to the Luoyang in the future, how could Li Mu raise his head in front of her? It would have been more convenient for the Luoyang government to take over this case. However, Li Mu thought about it. Lord Zhang was from the academy. If it involved the academy's case, it might be difficult for him. Moreover, this case was clearly a hot potato. After coming to the Luoyang, Li Mu had caused enough trouble for Lord Zhang. Lord Zhang had treated him well. If he threw this big trouble to him, it would be too inhumane. When Li Mu walked on the streets, he would attract a lot of attention. Many people even went up to greet him. When he walked through the streets with a few beautiful girls, 100% of the people turned to look at him. Some of the Luoyang citizens couldn't help but ask, "Constable Li, where are we going?" Li Mu replied, "The Ministry of Justice." When the crowd heard that, they perked up. There was going to be a good show to watch. Ever since Constable Li came to the Luoyang, they had gotten used to the bustle. They weren't used to it after so many days of peace. For a moment, the citizens who had nothing to do followed Li Mu to the Ministry of Justice from afar. When the butcher on the street saw this, he slammed his boning knife on the chopping board and said to the waiter of the tea house next door, "Watch my stall. I'm going to watch the show." Although the waiter of the tea house also wanted to watch the show, if he left, the shopkeeper would definitely deduct his money. When he turned back to look at the counter, he realized that the shopkeeper was gone. At the entrance of the Ministry of Justice's Yamen, when the two gatekeepers saw the crowd of citizens heading toward the Ministry of Justice, led by Li Mu from the Luoyang Yamen, they immediately felt a headache coming on. They turned around and ran into the Yamen without hesitation. Li Mu walked to the entrance of the Ministry of Justice, bent down, picked up the drumstick, and hit the drum hard. Inside the Ministry of Justice, the director of the Ministry of Justice was drinking tea. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of tea. He put down the teacup, stood up, and said angrily, "Who's hitting the drum outside?" Although the drum outside the Ministry of Justice was for the citizens to cry out their grievances, it didn't make much noise on normal days. The sound of the drum was annoying. It was fine if it interrupted the director of the Ministry of Justice's work, but if he was in the middle of an important activity and was startled by the drum, the consequences would be unimaginable. The Yamen had a rule that anyone who wanted to hit the drum would be stopped and interrogated. If they had any grievances, they would have to talk about it. The director of the Ministry of Justice's pants were wet. When he saw the gatekeeper running in, he said angrily, "What are you doing? Why didn't you stop someone from hitting the drum?" The gatekeeper said in distress, "Sir, the one who hit the drum is Li Mu. I didn't dare to stop him." The director of the Ministry of Justice was shocked. "What? What's Li Mu doing here again?" After the incident with Zhou Chu, he gave up on the idea of avenging his humiliation on Li Mu. He could even summon the heavenly lightning to help him. This ability was too terrifying. The officials of the Ministry of Justice privately called him the Lightning King. He didn't have to pay with his life even if he killed someone. After all, the heavens were the scapegoat. Who would dare to make the heavens pay with their life? The director of the Ministry of Justice had cultivated for 30 years, but he was only at the 4th level. He couldn't take more than a few purple heavenly lightning strikes. The director of the Ministry of Justice quickly said, "Go out and tell him that I'm not here. Tell him to go back." Li Mu walked in from outside and said, "Sir Yang, how can you be like this? The crime of neglecting your duty is not light." The director of the Ministry of Justice looked at Li Mu, who was still holding the drumstick in his hand. He knew that he couldn't avoid it today. He gritted his teeth and asked, "What are you doing here?" Li Mu said, "I want to report a case." In the court of the Ministry of Justice, the director of the Ministry of Justice sat above and asked Li Mu, "As the constable of the Divine Capital, why didn't you report a case to the Divine Capital? Why did you come to the Ministry of Justice?" Li Mu said, "Because this case is related to the Ministry of Justice." Li Mu held Xiao Qi's hand and said, "This morning, Jianghu, a student of the 100 River Academy, wanted to rape my sister in the Great Music Lane. He was stopped and handed over to the Ministry of Justice. However, the Ministry of Justice let him go." "Sir, don't you have an explanation for this?" The director of the Ministry of Justice glanced at him and said, "He didn't succeed. I've already reprimanded him. What else do you want?" Li Mu's face darkened. He asked, "Sir Yang, you're the director of the Ministry of Justice. You should know that the crime of attempted rape is not much lighter than rape. How can the Ministry of Justice let him go so easily?" The director of the Ministry of Justice said, "According to Jianghu, he was confused for a moment after drinking and then realized it himself." According to the law, Jianghu took the initiative to stop the violence. This is not considered attempted rape. Is my judgment wrong? Li Mu said, "Sir, don't you think it's a bit hasty to close the case based on Jianghu's one-sided statement?" The director of the Ministry of Justice said indifferently, "I'm the director of the Ministry of Justice. You're just a small constable. Do I need you to teach me how to judge a case?" "Well," Li Mu pointed at the director of the Ministry of Justice and said loudly, "As an official of the Ministry of Justice, it's bad enough that you don't make decisions for the people. How can you be in cahoots with such a villain?" He pointed at the top of his head and said angrily, "Damned God, if you have eyes, you can punish such a muddle-headed official." The director of the Ministry of Justice's expression changed drastically. He jumped down from the table and covered Li Mu's mouth. He said in horror, "Let's talk nicely. Constable Li, don't do this." Chapter 239. Li Mu was just putting on an act. He glanced at the director and said, "It was you who didn't talk to me properly first." The director wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said, "It's just a small case. There's no need to trouble the heavens." "It's not necessary, really not necessary," Li Mu said seriously. "Perhaps it's just a small case to you, sir. But to me, it concerns my sister's innocence and even her life. Do you think it's not necessary?" The director said awkwardly, "When did you have a sister?" Li Mu said calmly, "I just recognized her as my sworn sister." "Let's talk about it slowly." The director pointed at a constable and said, "Bring a chair for Constable Li." After going through so many things, he completely understood. Li Mu did not purposely go against the old party. Today, he dared to make a scene in the Ministry of Justice and offend the old party. Tomorrow, he dared to offend the new party and strike the disciples of the Zhou family into pieces. He did not belong to any party or power. He was just a reckless young man who did not care about his life. He had no grudges with Li Mu in the past. It was just a small conflict. There was no need for him to risk his life. The constable brought a chair. After Li Mu sat down, the director said, "I was wrong just now. Don't take it to heart, Constable Li. Jianghu is a student of the academy. The academy has a high status. Without the academy's permission, if the Ministry of Justice detained their student, I would not be able to withstand the pressure from the people, the imperial court, and other parties." Li Mu asked, "Are you going to let such a villain go unpunished because you're worried about offending people?" The director thought for a while and suddenly said, "Luoyang Magistrate Zhang Chun is upright and outspoken. He is not afraid of the powerful. Why don't the Ministry of Justice send this case to the Luoyang government?" "You can do whatever you want," Li Mu said. "Since the Ministry of Justice has already made a judgment, I don't think it's a good idea to pass it on to the Luoyang government. If the files are messed up, wouldn't a simple case become more complicated?" The director of the Ministry of Justice sighed and said, "Your sister is only slightly injured. Why does Arrestor Li have to offend the academy? The academy is very protective of its own people and has many connections. There is no benefit in offending them. I'm doing this for your own good." Little Seven tugged at Li Mu's sleeves and whispered, "Brother-in-law, forget it." Li Mu didn't want to let it go, but seeing that Little Seven was about to cry, he could only bring them back first. The director of the Ministry of Justice stood at the entrance of the yamen and waved at Li Mu. "Constable Li, take care." After sending the god of plagues away, he walked back to the yamen and heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice standing in the courtyard, he bowed slightly and said, "Assistant Minister Zhou." Zhou Zhong asked, "How was it?" The director of the Ministry of Justice let out a long sigh and said, "I understand now. Arrestor Li is a person who can be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. If you were to be tough with him, he would be tougher than you. Moreover, he is not afraid of anyone. Fortunately, he is not in the Ministry of Justice. Otherwise, the Ministry of Justice would be in chaos because of him." Zhou Zhong said, "I'm asking you, what do you think of Li Mu as a person?" The director of the Ministry of Justice thought for a while and said, "I used to think that he was arrogant and annoying. Now, I think he is actually quite amazing. The things that he does are things that others don't dare to do." Zhou Zhong smiled and walked into the yamen with his hands behind his back. The director of the Ministry of Justice followed behind him and said, The case of the Great Music Workshop is just a small case. However, something big happened in Danyang County. The county magistrate of Ani County under Danyang County suddenly died in his home. After the investigation, the Danyang County government found out that he was assassinated. Assassinated? Zhou Zhong raised his eyebrows and asked, "What about the county magistrate of Ani?" The director of the Ministry of Justice shook his head and said, "I don't know. Sir, you suspect that he is a heartless official who oppresses the people. This caused the righteous people to be dissatisfied and thus caused the death of his life?" Zhou Zhong nodded and said, "It's hard to say whether it's true or not. First, send someone to the Ministry of Personnel to get the resume of the county magistrate of Ani." On the streets of Luoyang, Xiaoqi lowered his head and pinched the corner of his clothes. He whispered, "Brother-in-law, you won't blame me, right?" Li Mu sighed and said, "I know that you are doing this for my own good. However, this will only encourage the unhealthy trend in Luoyang." Yinin advised Li Mu, "Brother-in-law, you have just arrived in Luoyang not long ago. You don't know how important the academy is in Luoyang and the Great Zhou. For generations, all the officials in the imperial court came from the academy. The people also respect and trust the academy. If you offend the academy, they can easily ruin your future." Xiaoqi and Yinin were all thinking for him. Li Mu could not reprimand them. After sending them back to the Great Music Bar, he returned to the government office with Xiao Bai. In the Great Music Lane, the middle-aged woman pointed at their heads and scolded angrily, "How powerful do you think my background is? Is the Ministry of Justice a place where you can mess around? Every single one of you has no conscience. Will you only stop after I close my shop and send me to prison?" She slapped their butts and said, "I am still counting on you to make money. Go back to your rooms. In the future, play a solo in the accord room. Don't close the door." When Li Mu returned to the government office, he saw Zhang Chun pacing back and forth in the yard. Seeing Li Mu return, Zhang Chun asked, "Do you have any more pears?" Li Mu asked, "Sir, don't you think the gong pears are sour?" Zhang Chun said, "This official likes to eat sour food." Li Mu placed the gong pears in the flask heaven ring. He flipped his hand and a pear appeared in his palm. He handed it to Zhang Chun. Zhang Chun had seen Li Mu's flask heaven magic treasure on the day of Zhou Chuxing's death. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he could not help but sigh at the difference between people. Her Majesty's grace to him was truly meticulous and meticulous, from the moment he was young to the moment he was young. He took the pear and said, "Don't be so stingy. Give me another one." Li Mu threw him another one. Zhang Chun did not eat it. He just put it in his sleeve. Li Mu asked, "Sir, did anything happen in the imperial court today?" "It's nothing serious." Zhang Chun recalled and said, "Her Majesty wanted to reduce the number of students in the academy. She was opposed by Baichuan and Qingyun Academy. The deputy dean of Baichuan Academy directly scolded Her Majesty in the imperial court. He said that Her Majesty wanted to overturn Emperor Wen's achievements and destroy the accumulation of Great Zhou over the past 100 years. He reminded Her Majesty not to become a sinner. Although the academy could not participate in politics, a few of the higher-ups in the academy could attend the imperial court. This was a rule set during the reign of Emperor Wen. Because of their superior status and no interests involved, they could even criticize the emperor when they met a fatuous emperor. This was also the power granted to them by Emperor Wen. Li Mu asked, "What did Her Majesty say?" Zhang Chun shook his head and said, "Her Majesty said nothing." It seemed that Mr. Mei was right. The Empress was indeed a broad-minded and wise ruler. She could still remain silent even after being criticized like this. But even if the Empress could tolerate it, Li Mu couldn't. Since he already knew, he could not pretend that nothing had happened. He had to share the burden of the ruler. The Empress was humiliated. If he did not do something for the Empress, he would be too ashamed to eat the tribute pears she rewarded him. Li Mu thought for a moment and suddenly asked, "Sir, if someone attempted to rape a woman, how should he be punished?" Zhang Chun asked, "Was he stopped midway or stopped by himself?" Li Mu said, "The woman resisted and attracted others to stop him." Zhang Chun said, the punishment for attempted rape is 100 beatings. Generally, the punishment is more than 3 years and less than 10 years in prison. In serious cases, the punishment is death by beheading. Li Mu said, there was an attempted rape case in Chengdu just now. Zhang Chun asked, did you catch him? Li Mu shook his head and said, no. Zhang Chun glared at him and said, then what are you waiting for? Go and catch him. Li Mu held a fist and palm salute and said, yes, sir. Wait. He was about to leave when Zhang Chun suddenly stopped him. He looked at Li Mu suspiciously and asked, is the person you're talking about a disciple of the Zhou family? Li Mu shook his head and said, no. Zhang Chun touched his chin and said, then it's the Shao royal family. Li Mu shook his head again and said, no. Is he an influential person in Chengdu? Is he a disciple of an official of the 4th rank or above? Zhang Chun finally breathed a sigh of relief and said, what are you waiting for? Go and catch him. I hate criminals who rape women the most. The imperial court should really change the law and execute all these people once and for all. After a moment, Wang Wu and Li Mu came out of the government office and asked, boss, where are we going to catch him? Li Mu said, 100 Rivers Academy. Wang Wu was stunned and asked, where? Li Mu looked at him and asked, you've lived in Chengdu for more than 20 years. Do you know where 100 Rivers Academy is? Wang Wu immediately explained, of course I know where 100 Rivers Academy is. But boss, the academy doesn't allow outsiders to enter. We can't even enter the academy's gate, let alone catch him. Li Mu frowned. The academy was not the Ministry of Justice. There were countless experts there. Breaking into the academy was not much easier than breaking into the ancestral court of Fu Lu School. Li Mu was not arrogant enough to break into the academy. He thought for a moment and turned to walk into the government office. Wang Wu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that even the fearless boss knew that the academy was not to be trifled with. Soon, he saw Li Mu come out of the government office again, but he had changed his official uniform into a regular one. Wang Wu scratched his head and asked, boss, we haven't opened the government office yet. What are you? After a moment, at the gate of 100 Rivers Academy. Li Mu had just approached the gate when an old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man reached out to stop him and asked, who are you? What are you doing at the academy? The academy was indeed an academy. Even the guards at the gate were in the divine power realm. Li Mu smiled and said, I'm Jianghu's relative. I have something important to tell him. The old man said expressionlessly, those who are not students of the academy are not allowed to enter. If you have something to say, I'll pass it on for you. Li Mu shook his head and said, this is very important. I have to tell him personally. I don't have to enter the academy. I just have to ask Jianghu to come out. Chapter 240. After the old man entered the academy, Li Mu waited outside the academy. The 100 Rivers Academy was located in the southern district of the divine capital. It covered a large area. The road in front of the academy could accommodate 4 carriages at the same time. There was a stone tablet in front of the academy. It was engraved with the words, 100 Rivers to the Sea. It was said that it was written by Emperor Wen himself. Standing in front of the academy's gate, a magnificent aura hit him in the face. Li Mu wouldn't have such a feeling just by looking at a door. There must be a formation covering the academy. Li Mu waited outside for a quarter of an hour. During this time, students came in and out from time to time. Li Mu noticed that when they entered the academy and walked through the gate, there was an obscure fluctuation of spirit energy on them. Obviously, the gate of the academy was a powerful formation. The students of the academy should have something to verify their identity. If outsiders came close, they would be blocked outside by the formation. Li Mu waited for a while more. The old man he saw just now finally came out with a young student. Jianghu looked around but did not see a familiar face. He turned around and asked, you said that my relative is here. Where is he? The old man pointed at Li Mu and said, this person said that he is your relative and has something important to tell you. Why, you don't know him? Jianghu walked in front of Li Mu and asked, "Who are you and why are you looking for me?" Li Mu said, "Your family asked me to bring you something." Jianghu was puzzled. "What is it?" Li Mu stretched out his hand. A light flashed and a chain appeared in his hand. There was a collar at the front of the chain. Jianghu was still staring blankly at the thing in Li Mu's hand when the collar suddenly opened. It wrapped around his neck and closed again. The shackles of the yamen were partly prepared for ordinary people and partly for demonic ghost cultivators. Although this chain was not a powerful magic weapon, it had no problem locking down low-level demonic ghosts and cultivators of the lower 3 realms. When they were locked by the chain, they could not use their magic power. Jianghu's cultivation was only in the soul condensation realm. By the time he reacted, Li Mu had already put the iron chain around his neck. The old man with the divine arts reacted much faster. He noticed that something was wrong and instantly appeared here. He glared at Li Mu and said furiously, "Junior, what are you doing?" Li Mu took out the token on his waist and waved it in front of the old man, saying, "100 Rivers Academy's Li Mu failed to rape an innocent girl. Chengdu Yamen arrestor Li Mu ordered to arrest the criminal." The old man said with a gloomy face, "He's a student of the academy. Let him go immediately." Li Mu snorted and said, "Luoyang is the great Zhou's capital, not the academy's. If anyone breaks the law, the governor's office has the right to punish them." The old man glared at Li Mu and did not say anything more. He reached out to grab the chain in Li Mu's hand. Li Mu grabbed the chain with one hand and grabbed the air with the other. A fulu appeared in his hand. He looked at the old man and said coldly, "Using violence to threaten a public servant and obstructing official business. Even if I kill you in front of the academy today, I won't have to take responsibility." The old man stopped in his tracks and looked at the fulu in Li Mu's hand. He was afraid and did not dare to step forward. There were teachers in the academy who were proficient in the fulu. He knew what the purple cloud thunder charm looked like. The charm's power was not ordinary. If he was hit by it, even if he did not die, he would lose half his life. Seeing the old man retreat, Li Mu dragged Jianghu with the iron chain and swaggered towards the yamen. Jianghu was dragged by Li Mu. His face was full of panic and he shouted, "Save me!" The old man gritted his teeth and went back into the academy. In a classroom in the academy, the gray-haired old man stopped teaching and frowned. "What? You said Jianghu was taken away by the Luoyang Yamen?" The old man said, "He said Jianghu was related to a case and wanted to bring him back to the Yamen for investigation." The gray-haired old man threw down the book and said angrily, "How dare they? Since when did they have the right to interfere in the academy's matters?" He waved his sleeves and said in a deep voice, "Follow me to the Luoyang Yamen." The Baichuan Academy was not far from the Yamen. Li Mu dragged Jianghu on the street and attracted many people's attention. Many people greeted Li Mu every day and were already familiar with him. They approached him and asked, "Constable Li, what crime did this man commit?" Li Mu said, "Attempted rape of a woman. You have to take this as a warning and obey the law." That person quickly said, "We won't do such a thing even if we're beaten to death. This guy is dressed like a dog, but I didn't expect him to be a beast." Another person said, "Look at his clothes. He's definitely not from an ordinary family. I wonder which family he's from in Luoyang." He accidentally fell into Constable Li's hands again. There seemed to be 3 vertical blue ripples on the chest of his clothes. 3 blue ripples? Isn't that the symbol of the Baichuan Academy? Is he a student of the Baichuan Academy? Yes, he's a student of the Baichuan Academy. He's wearing the academy uniform. Li Mu dragged Jianghu away. The people were still talking behind them. The academy had a high status in the hearts of the people. It was a place that nurtured talents for the country. For more than 100 years, the academy's students had contributed a lot to the Great Zhou. How can a student of the Baichuan Academy be a rapist? Do you think Constable Li caught the wrong person? The person caught by Constable Li can't be wrong. He provoked the old faction and killed Director Zhou. It's only been a few days. Why is Constable Li at odds with the academy again? What's wrong with the academy? If someone from the academy breaks the law, he has to be punished by the law. I'm worried that the academy will cover for him. The academy is a place that educates and cultivates talents for the country. How can it cover for a rapist? Your worries are unnecessary. How can there be such an academy? Li Mu brought Jianghu back to the government office. Zhang Chun had been waiting in the court for a long time. When he saw Jianghu, he was stunned and asked, "This is the rapist?" Li Mu nodded and said, "That's him." Zhang Chun's face darkened. He said, "He's well dressed. I didn't expect him to be a beast." After snorting coldly, a trace of doubt appeared on his face. He muttered, "Why do I find his clothes familiar? I think I've seen them somewhere before." Wang Wu reminded him, "This is the uniform of the Baichuan Academy." Zhang Chun suddenly understood and said, "I remember. When I was still in the Scroll Academy, the students of the Baichuan Academy wore this kind of clothes during the competition of the 4 academies. It turns out that he's from the Baichuan Academy. The Baichuan Academy." Zhang Chun stared at Li Mu with wide eyes and said angrily, "He's from the Baichuan Academy. Why didn't you tell me?" Li Mu said innocently, "Your Excellency didn't ask." Zhang Chun was speechless for a moment. He asked the dignitaries, the old party, and the new party, but he didn't mention the academy. It was not that he didn't think of it, but he thought that even if Li Mu was bold, he should know the status of the academy in the hearts of the officials and the people. Even His Majesty had to respect the academy. Who did he think he was? Could he ride on His Majesty's back? Li Mu said, "Your Excellency, Zhang once said that everyone is equal in front of the law. Anyone who commits a crime must be punished by the law. Your Excellency has always been my role model. Do you think that the students of the academy are above the people and can get away with it if they commit a crime?" Zhang Chun's old face turned red. He coughed softly and said, "Of course I didn't mean that, but you should at least tell me in advance so that I can be mentally prepared." Li Mu said, "I thought that in your eyes, there are only law-abiding and law-breaking people. There is no distinction between the common people and the students of the academy." Zhang Chun sighed, "But," Li Mu asked, "don't you think so, Your Excellency?" Zhang Chun's expression turned serious. He said, "Of course I think so. Everyone is equal in front of the law. Even the students of the academy must be punished if they are punished." As soon as he finished speaking, several figures walked in from outside. The leader was a gray-haired old man. Behind him were several students who were also wearing the uniform of the 100 Rivers Academy. Jianghu looked at the old man with hope on his face. He shouted, "Sir, save me." Zhang Chun walked up to the old man and cupped his fists. He said, "I'm Zhang Chun of the Divine Capital. May I know who you are?" The old man in luxurious clothes said lightly, "My surname is Fong. I'm an instructor of the 100 Rivers Academy." Zhang Chun said, "So it's Sir Fong. I've heard so much about you." The old man in luxurious clothes went straight to the point. "May I know what crime my student has committed for you to detain him in the yamen, Sir Zhang?" Zhang Chun said, "This person attempted to rape a woman. Although he failed, he must be punished by the law." The old man in luxurious clothes said, "Jianghu is a student of the academy. The academy will punish him for his mistake. There's no need for the yamen to do it." Zhang Chun shook his head. He didn't make a mistake. He broke the law. The old man in luxurious clothes asked, "May I ask if he ever succeeded in raping a woman?" Zhang Chun shook his head. The old man in luxurious clothes said, "If that's the case, how can you say he broke the law?" Zhang Chun didn't explain this time, so the old man thought that he had nothing to say. He grabbed the iron chain around Jianghu's neck and pulled with force. The iron chain was torn apart by him. He glanced at Jianghu and said coldly, "You disgraceful thing. Scram back to the academy immediately and accept your punishment." Jianghu shuddered and quickly stood in the midst of the students. The old man glanced at Zhang Chun and said, "Sorry to disturb you." With that said, he led the group away from the yamen. From beginning to end, Li Mu did not stop them. With his understanding of Zhang Chun, it was hard to say if Jianghu had not entered the yamen. Once he entered, it would not be easy for him to leave. Even if he left now, he would have to return sooner or later. This is too much. As soon as the old man left, Zhang Chun pointed at the door and shouted, "How dare they barge into the yamen and kidnap a criminal in broad daylight? Do they have no respect for the law? Does His Majesty even exist? I'll write a memorial to His Majesty." Chapter 241. The longer Li Mu knew Zhang Chun, the more he realized that Zhang Chun had many tricks up his sleeve despite his thick eyebrows and big eyes. If he insisted on not letting Jianghu go, the academy's instructor would not dare to snatch Jianghu from the yamen. The academy's status was superior, but it did not mean that its students were above the law. The instructor would only dare to take Jianghu away if he pretended to be afraid of the academy. When he took Jianghu away, he gave the yamen enough reason to do so. But by doing so, he would offend the Baichuan Academy. Li Mu reminded him, "Sir, aren't you afraid of the academy?" Zhang Chun spat and said, "What's there to be afraid of? This is the government office. If I let him take him away so easily, I will lose face. Where will the law and His Majesty's face be?" Li Mu felt that Zhang Chun was going to throw caution to the wind. Lord Zhang, who used to be as timid as a mouse, had now become as hot-headed as Li Mu. What had he experienced? Outside the Luoyang Yamen, the people who were attracted saw the people from the academy barge into the yamen and walk out after a while. Jianghu, who was handcuffed by Li Mu, was also in the crowd and could not help but be shocked. He's out just like that? Raping a woman is such a serious crime. He's out just like that? What else can he do? You know what kind of place the academy is and how many connections they have in the imperial court. Not to mention rape, even murder and arson. As long as the academy protects them, nothing will happen. The people could not understand what they saw with their own eyes. The academy had a high status in the hearts of the people. For 100 years, the academy had been sending talents to the imperial court. Most of the 36 counties in the Great Zhou, including the Luoyang, were governed by the academy's students. The academy had contributed greatly. The 4 major academies in the Luoyang were respected by the people, be it the instructors or the students. They only saw the academy's glory, but rarely saw this side of the academy. The Baichuan Academy. The old man in fine clothes who had returned to the academy looked at Jianghu and snorted. He said angrily, "Bastard." Jianghu hurriedly knelt down and said, "Teacher, this student was wrong. This student will never dare to do it again." The old man said, "This old man has saved you this time. If there's a next time, you'll have to fend for yourself." Jianghu repeatedly promised, "I won't dare to do it again. I won't dare to do it again." The old man coldly looked at him and said, "If you were a bit more diligent in your cultivation, you wouldn't have been so easily taken down by a Jushan officer. Don't go out to drink and have fun. Spend your time on cultivation. If you still can't reach the Jushan level in a year, then get the hell out of the academy." After the old man finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left. Jianghu heaved a sigh of relief and whispered, "That was close." A student beside him smiled at him and said, "Didn't you do this kind of thing smoothly before? How come you almost fell into the gutter this time?" Jianghu said hatefully, "It was fine this time. I even went to the Ministry of Justice and still came back. It's all that damned constable's fault. He almost ruined my future. This debt, I'll settle it sooner or later." The student said, "It's just a constable. When you leave the academy next year and get a good position in the divine capital, there will be plenty of ways to kill him." Crepe Myrtle Hall. There wasn't anything important to discuss in today's morning court. After the 6 assistant ministers reported their work, the young female official walked out from behind the curtain and said, "If there is nothing else, then today's morning court will end here." The officials put away their tablets and were about to leave when a voice suddenly came from the back of the hall. "Your Majesty, this official has a memorial." Everyone couldn't help but look at the back. During the morning court, the officials stood according to their ranks. Those standing at the back were usually the lowest-ranking officials. When they came to the court, they were just going through the motions. Very few of them would take the initiative to speak. At the end of everyone's line of sight, at the entrance of Crepe Myrtle Hall, an official in the second-last row stood up. It was the first time for most of the officials in the hall to see him. The official took a few steps forward and came to the center of the hall. He bowed and said, "I'm Zhang Chun of the Divine Capital. I have something important to report." When he reported his official position, many people in the hall realized that he was Zhang Chun. The abolition of the silver in lieu of crime was due to the letter he had sent. The children of several officials in the hall had all suffered under his hands. He had only been in the Divine Capital for a few months, but he had been promoted twice. He even had the right to discuss matters in the court. He had stepped on these officials. The young female official stood at the top and said calmly, "Report." Zhang Chun raised his head and said, "Instructor Fang of the Baichuan Academy forced his way into the Yamen 3 days ago and took away a criminal from the Divine Capital Yamen. This case involves the Academy, so I dare not make a judgment. Your Majesty, please make a decision." As soon as he finished speaking, there was an uproar in the court. No one had expected that Zhang Chun would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. He had just proposed to abolish the substitute silver last time, and now he was accusing the Academy. No wonder Li Mu of the Divine Capital Yamen was so arrogant. He had a superior who was even more arrogant than him. It had been so many years since someone accused the Academy in the court. This was the first time. Nonsense. Chapter 242. Instructor Fang was rendered speechless by Zhang Chun's words. The vice-headmaster of the 100 Rivers Academy could no longer sit by and watch. He said, "I believe that the students of our academy would not do such a thing. Your Majesty, please investigate thoroughly and clear the name of our academy." After a short period of silence, the Empress's voice came from behind the curtain. "Since Vice-Headmaster Chen has said so, the case will be investigated by the Luoyang government." Vice-Headmaster Chen raised his head and said, "Your Majesty, the Luoyang government is suspected of framing the academy. The case should not be handled by the Luoyang government." The Empress thought for a while and said, "Then let the Ministry of Justice investigate." The Minister of Justice stepped out and bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." This was all Li Mu and Zhang Chun could do. Although they had set a trap for Instructor Fang, they could find out whether he had really made a scene in the Luoyang government and snatched Instructor Fang away with the little investigation. It was already the best result that the Ministry of Justice could do a retrial. Li Mu had never thought of bringing down the academy, and it was impossible for him to do so. Overall, the academy's existence had more advantages than disadvantages. Firstly, he wanted to seek justice for Shaoqi, and secondly, he wanted to vent the Empress's anger. Although the academy was a place to educate people and cultivate talents for the country, it should not be above the law. They should not be on the altar in the human world. Jianghu's case was originally a small case that would not affect the academy. However, Instructor Fang had taken Jianghu away from the Luoyang government in public, which had caused a public outcry. It added a stain to the holy and glorious image of the academy. The young female official stepped out and said, "The court is dismissed." There was an etiquette for the withdrawal of the court. The officials respectfully sent the Empress off. The ones closest to the door, the ones with the lowest rank, had to take 2 steps back and wait for the officials in front to leave first. Li Mu and Zhang Chun stood at the door. Countless eyes swept over them. After everyone had left, the two of them slowly walked out of the hall. Li Mu felt a little regretful. It was not easy to enter the palace, but he did not see the Empress's face. There would be no chance next time. In the imperial garden behind the Ziwei Palace, the young female official said, "This magistrate of Luoyang is quite brave. I can't stand the arrogance of those from the academy in the imperial court." Mr. Mei also said, "Luoyang's Zhang Chun is neither servile nor overbearing. He's a useful person. We should reward him more as an incentive." The young female official frowned and said, "But the speed of his promotion is already very fast. It has never happened in recent years. It is impossible to promote him again." The Empress thought for a moment, then said, "Give him a chest of pears." Mr. Mei nodded and said, "That's good. There's a box of pears left." The Empress was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "There is only one box of tribute pears left?" Mr. May said, "In Jianghu County, there are only a few mother trees. They were carefully cultivated by the local government. Every year, there are no more than 10 boxes of tribute pears. After they are sent to the palace, they have to give some to the West Palace. There aren't many left." The Empress thought for a moment, then said, "Then give me half a box." "No, give me 3, Luoyang government." Zhang Chun looked at the 3 boxes of tribute pears sent from the palace. He bowed excitedly and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Mr. May said, "I hope that Mr. Zhang will continue to do his job diligently and honestly. Don't let Your Majesty down." Zhang Chun said solemnly, "I will remember." After sending off Mr. May, Zhang Chun picked up a tribute pear and took a bite. He said proudly, "This pear is so sweet." After leaving the palace, Li Mu went straight to the great music bar. The Ministry of Justice would definitely ask Shao Qi and the others to investigate the case. He needed to tell them in advance so that they would not panic. When Little Seven heard this, she was clearly worried. She was only a lowly musician and had never experienced such a situation. Li Mu looked at her and comforted her, "Don't worry. I will go to the Ministry of Justice with you. You are the victim. They should be the ones worried." When Little Seven heard this, she finally relaxed. At the same time, in the Ministry of Justice, Vice President Chen said to the Minister of the Ministry of Justice, "This matter concerns the reputation of the Academy. I will leave it to you." The Minister of the Ministry of Justice hesitated for a moment and looked up at him. He said, "The behavior of the Academy's students has nothing to do with the Academy. If it is handled impartially, the Academy will not be implicated. If the Ministry of Justice is biased, it will be disadvantageous to the Academy. Vice President Chen, you must think carefully." Vice President Chen frowned. He had just declared that Jianghu was innocent in the court. If the Ministry of Justice overturned it, wouldn't he become a joke? At this moment, the Minister of the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Zhong, said, "The Ministry of Justice has the power to decide the case." The girl was not harmed. As long as Jianghu insists that he was rude after drinking and repents, he will be exempted from punishment. Vice President Chen thought for a moment and said, "I still don't believe that the Academy students would do such a bad thing." The Minister of the Ministry of Justice understood what he meant. He meant that the Ministry of Justice would help the Academy regardless of whether Jianghu was guilty or not. He already knew the inside story of this case. With the Ministry of Justice's ability, it would not be difficult to get Jianghu off the hook within the scope of the law. He was from the Baichuan Academy, so he could not refuse. He nodded and said, "Since Vice President Chen has decided, then let's do it." After that, he looked at the Minister of the Ministry of Justice and said, "I'll leave this case to you, Minister Zhou." Zhou Zhong nodded and said, "Don't worry." Jianghu's case had already caused a certain degree of discussion within a small circle in the past 3 days. In the morning court, the Luoyang ordered Zhang Chun to sue the Academy's instructors. The news that the Empress ordered the Ministry of Justice to reinvestigate the case also gradually spread after the morning court. When people saw that Jianghu was brought to the Ministry of Justice, a large number of people began to gather at the entrance of the Ministry of Justice to watch. Zhu Tsong and Wei Peng, who had been drinking in the fragrance house, were able to enter the Ministry of Justice because of Yang Xiu. They watched from afar in the direction of the court. Yang Xiu said with a serious expression, "The minister rarely judges cases in person." Zhu Tsong asked, "How will Jianghu be sentenced?" "Rape is a serious crime. I'm afraid the rest of his life is over," Wei Peng said. "Not necessarily." Zhu Tsong knew that Wei Peng had been painstakingly studying the laws of the Great Zhou these days. He turned to look at him and asked, "What do you mean?" Wei Peng said, "In the laws of the Great Zhou, raping a woman is a serious crime. Usually, the offender will be sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. If the case is serious, the offender can be executed. Even if he doesn't succeed in his crime, he will still be sentenced to 3 years in prison for attempted rape." Zhu Tsong asked, "That means Jianghu will spend at least 3 years in prison?" Wei Peng shook his head and said, "This is a case of attempted rape. If he gives up in the process of rape and stops the crime voluntarily, he can be exempted from punishment if he doesn't cause any harm to the woman. He looked in the direction of the court and said slowly, "The key to this case is whether Jianghu stopped the violence voluntarily or was stopped by someone else. This will determine whether he will be acquitted or be sentenced to 3 years in prison." Zhu Tsong was puzzled. What's the difference if he failed to rape her anyway? I know that. Yang Xiu finally had a chance to interrupt. He said, if he stops the crime voluntarily, he will also be sentenced to a heavy sentence. The perpetrator will have no way out. This law seems to give the perpetrator a chance, but it is actually a protection for the victim. Wei Ping nodded and said, although this is the original intention of the law, it will also give many people a chance to take advantage of this loophole. In the court of the Ministry of Justice. The court is dismissed. Jianghu left 10 taels of silver and looked at Li Mu and the others. He smiled and strode out of the Ministry of Justice. Li Mu sent Shao Qi and the others out of the Ministry of Justice. He looked back and walked back. He looked at a figure standing in the courtyard and said slowly, Sir Zhou, you should know better than anyone whether Jianghu is guilty or not, right? Zhou Zhong looked at him and asked, is this important? Li Mu said in a low voice, if right or wrong, justice and justice are not important, what else is important in this world? Zhou Zhong looked into his eyes and said after a long time, you are really like a friend that I haven't seen for many years. Li Mu said coldly, you don't deserve such a friend. Zhou Zhong was not angry. Instead, he smiled and said, young man, when you first came to Luoyang, you thought that you were the embodiment of justice and did not care about anyone. They fought with the rich and powerful, corrupt officials, and the academy. There were many people like you in the past, but now you are the only one. Do you know why? He said to himself, some people are dead, some are still alive. If the living want to live a better life, they have to become the people they used to hate the most. You will also have such a day, Li Mu said, you can wait and see. Zhou Zhong said, I will wait and see. Li Mu turned around and left in big strides. Zhou Zhong looked at his back and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. Perhaps it would not be mentioned again in a few days. However, after Jianghu committed the crime, he was still able to get away with it under the protection of the academy. This matter would stir up even more public opinion among the people. It was inevitable that the people would look at the 100 Rivers Academy through colored glasses in the future. It had to be said that some people in the academy were used to being high and mighty. That was why they made such a stupid decision. Zhou Zhong wasn't helping the 100 Rivers Academy. He had solved a small problem for the 100 Rivers Academy, but he had also planted a big problem for them. Once the reputation of the academy collapsed, it would not be so easy to rebuild it. If Her Majesty could seize the opportunity, she might be able to change part of the situation in the imperial court. Li Mu felt that he was really worried about Her Majesty. As a lowly official with only a few taels of silver a month, he was worried about the Prime Minister. Outside the Ministry of Justice, the onlookers had not dispersed. A man came forward and asked, Constable Li, why did Jianghu swagger out of the Ministry of Justice? Is he really not guilty? Li Mu did not speak. He only sighed and said, the Ministry of Justice has already declared Jianghu not guilty. Let's disperse. How could this be? Constable Li, is there any inside story? Isn't it obvious? Don't make things difficult for Constable Li. He has his own difficulties. Who dares to provoke the academy? Constable Li might even lose his position. Constable Li has done so much for us. We have to think for him. The people were very dissatisfied with Jianghu's ending. If there was no outside intervention, this dissatisfaction would reach its peak in a short period of time and then slowly fade away. Humans were forgetful. After a few days, if something new happened in Luoyang, these old things would be replaced and forgotten. Li Mu was still brooding over Zhou Zhong's matter. When he returned to the Yamen, he flipped open the law of Zhou and found the laws that Zhou Zhong had advocated. The more he read, the angrier he became. He had advocated the abolition of the silver law of substitution more than 10 years ago. Since the establishment of the Great Zhou, it had pursued the rule of etiquette. Under this rule, the aristocrats and officials enjoyed great privileges. Later, some emperors began to accept the idea of the rule of law, which led to the current situation of rule of etiquette and law. The silver law of substitution was actually to legalize the privileges of the privileged class. Zhou Zhong was resolutely opposed to this practice, thinking that it was an insult to the legal system. The law did not distinguish between relatives and estrangement, high and low. The monarch and his ministers, from top to bottom, high and low, all followed the law. Punishing the wrong did not evade the ministers, rewarding the good did not spare the common man. He wanted to implement a thorough rule of law. In addition, he also pointed out the shortcomings of the academy and suggested that the imperial court should select talents from outside the academy. This could effectively prevent the officials from forming cliques and the academy from interfering in politics. Later he failed. His failure was not surprising. It was because he challenged the officials, the nobles, and the academy. Because of this matter, he was demoted and almost exiled. Seeing this, Li Mu's anger and resentment subsided a little. He could not describe what he was feeling in his heart. Those who held the firewood for the people froze to death in the wind and snow. Those who opened the way for justice died in the thorns. This was the true portrayal of Zhou Zhong. Li Mu did not know what happened later, but it was not difficult to guess based on his current status and power. Zhang Chun strolled in from outside and looked at Li Mu with a proud expression. He asked, "Did His Majesty reward you with anything?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "No." Zhang Chun smiled and then said regretfully, "His Majesty rewarded me with 3 tribute pears. They were much sweeter than the ones I ate from you. Unfortunately, there were only 3. Otherwise, I would have given you one and let you have a taste." Li Mu shook his head and said, "I still have half a box at home. Sir, you can keep it for yourself." Feeling a familiar breath, Li Mu walked outside and saw Mr. Mei walking in from outside the yamen. The 2 people behind her moved a big box into the yard of the yamen. Mr. Mei said to Li Mu, "These spiritual jades are from His Majesty." Li Mu quickly walked forward and opened the box. Seeing that it was full of high-quality spiritual jades, he immediately put them into the flask space. After using up all the spiritual jades he got from the county yamen, he was worried about new ones. He did not expect His Majesty to be so considerate and send them to him so quickly. With these spiritual jades, he and Xiaobai did not have to worry about cultivation resources in a short time. Zhang Chun looked at the box of spiritual jades from afar. He touched the 2 tribute pears in his sleeve and suddenly felt that the one he ate just now was not as sweet as before. Li Mu knew that he was just doing what he was supposed to do. He said embarrassedly, "I didn't do anything wrong. Why did His Majesty suddenly reward me?" Mr. Mei said, "How can you hide your thoughts from His Majesty? Are you trying to take the opportunity to make trouble for the Academy so that you can avenge His Majesty?" If he did not know that the Empress was a cultivator of the 7th land who could sit in the palace and know everything in the world with a pinch of her fingers, Li Mu would have thought that she had installed a surveillance camera on him. But since they were talking about this, he could use Mr. Mei to tell His Majesty his thoughts. Li Mu said, "It's not entirely a bad thing that the Ministry of Justice covered up for Jianghu." The deputy headmaster of the Baichuan Academy dared to criticize His Majesty in front of the court because of the Academy's high status and high reputation among the people and the court. If the Academy loses its reputation, His Majesty can reasonably reduce the number of students from the Academy who can become officials. If such a scandal happens, how can they refute His Majesty? The Academy's high status was because they had sent many talents to the court and the people trusted them. Once the people no longer trusted them, they would naturally lose their high status. As the ruler of the Great Zhou, the Empress had absolute power. In principle, as long as she wanted to do something, there was nothing she could not do. However, if she acted arbitrarily and did not care about the opinions of the Academy and the officials, it would not be good for maintaining the stability of the court and gathering the people's support. All she needed was a reason. If the Empress took advantage of this and made a fuss, The academy would lose more than just trust and status. Mr. May's eyes flashed with a strange light. He said, "You're right. I'll go to the palace and report to His Majesty." Before she left, Li Mu added, "Remember to remind His Majesty that the impact of Jianghu's incident is limited. The Baichuan Academy has been in Luoyang for hundreds of years and will not lose its reputation so easily. The people will soon forget about this unless someone is fanning the flames and pushing the Baichuan Academy to the cusp of the storm." In the palace. In a hall. The space in the hall fluctuated and the figure of Mr. May appeared out of thin air. Her body began to change, gradually turning into another figure. She looked at the real Mr. May and said, "You're right. He is indeed loyal to me and smart. If he were in the court, I would feel much better. Think of a way to get him to my side." He was still the arrestor of the Luoyang Yamen, but he had to appear in the palace every time he attended the court. He stood in the corner of the palace and observed secretly. Li Mu was confused and asked, "Why did Her Majesty suddenly want me to be an imperial censor?" Mr. May said, "Because you are not afraid of the nobles or the academy. She dares to speak out. Her Majesty needs you to speak out in the imperial court." Li Mu nodded and said, "I understand." Baichuan Academy. An old man pointed at Vice President Qin and said angrily, "Are you stupid? You ruined the academy's century-old reputation in order to protect a guilty student. You have to apologize to the academy's past sages." Vice President Chen's face also darkened. He said, "This was originally a small matter. It shouldn't have escalated to this point. Someone must have added fuel to the fire." The old man said angrily, "If you had done things impartially, how could you have been caught?" Vice President Chen said, "I want to know who set us up. This started with the Luoyang prefect Zhang Chun. I have already investigated. Zhang Chun was once a student of the Myriad Scroll Academy. Could this be a trap set by the Myriad Scroll Academy?" The old man said, "This is not important. For now, the most important thing is how to restore the academy's reputation." Even the headmaster, who was in seclusion, was alerted. The headmaster has already ordered Jianghu to be expelled from the academy and Fang Bo to be stripped of his teaching qualifications. No one is allowed to plead for them in the imperial court. Vice President Chen looked regretful. He gritted his teeth and said, "I understand." Ziwei Palace. 3 days ago, the imperial censor was ordered by the Empress to investigate Jianghu's case. After 3 days of questioning and investigation, the imperial censor finally found the origin of the case. When Jianghu was listening to music at the Great Music Bar, he was lustful towards a beautiful musician in a private room and wanted to violate her. The musician of the Great Music Bar could not bear the humiliation and cried for help. In the end, other musicians were alerted. They broke into the room and stopped Jianghu. It was not as Jianghu said, that he regretted it during the process of violating the musician. The Ministry of Justice misjudged the case because when Jianghu was being tried in the Ministry of Justice, he had a magic weapon given to him by his teacher, Fang Bo. This magic weapon could keep one awake when one's soul was being controlled, thus misleading the officials of the Ministry of Justice. After Jianghu committed the crime, he refused to confess and misled the Ministry of Justice, causing the case to be misjudged. This caused an extremely bad influence in Luoyang. According to the law, Jianghu was sentenced to 10 years in prison. His cultivation was abolished and he would never be employed again. Behind the curtain, the Empress asked Vice President Chen coldly, "Does the Baichuan Academy have any objections?" Vice President Chen lowered his head and said, "Fang Bo and Jianghu have deceived the imperial court and the academy. The Baichuan Academy has already expelled Jianghu from the academy and stripped Fang Bo of his teaching qualifications. The imperial censor has passed the judgment according to the law. The academy has no objections." The Empress said in a dignified voice, "Jianghu's case has caused a bad influence. The academy cannot escape the blame. This year, the quota for students of the Baichuan Academy to become officials will be reduced by half." Vice President Chen's lips moved, but he did not speak in the end. Such a scandal had happened in the academy. At this moment, he had no face to refute. While the Empress was on the throne, it was not suitable for bold and decisive reforms, which would be detrimental to the stability of the country. After the Empress spoke, none of the officials responded, and the atmosphere in the hall gradually became awkward. This was not the first time such a thing had happened. After all, almost all the officials in the imperial court were from the academy. Even the censors did not want to change the ancestral system that had been passed down for hundreds of years. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the corner of the hall. "Your Majesty is wise." Amidst the silence, a voice suddenly rang out, causing the hearts of the officials to tremble. Who was this audacious person who dared to speak at this time? They all looked at the corner of the hall, and a figure walked out from the corner. Li Mu? It's him. Why is he here? Wait, is he wearing the imperial censor robes? Imperial censor? His Majesty made him an imperial censor? Li Mu met the gazes of the officials and walked out from the corner of the Golden Hall. After someone responded, the Empress asked again, "What do you think, Minister Li?" The way the Empress addressed Li Mu made all the officials in the imperial court dumbfounded. Her Majesty had always addressed the officials in the imperial court as Minister Jiang, Minister Li, and other ministers. When had she ever used Minister Li? This special form of address clearly indicated that this newly promoted imperial censor was a trusted aide of Her Majesty the Empress. Li Mu walked to the center of the hall, cleared his throat, and said, "Your Majesty is wise. I also think that the academy system established during the reign of Emperor Wen was a great policy 100 years ago. To a large extent, it changed the chaos of the great Zhou officials who were not talented and virtuous. In the past 100 years, the Great Zhou has been developing continuously. This system can no longer meet the needs of the imperial court. The atmosphere in the hall was completely different from the past. In the past, if no one responded to the decrees proposed by the Empress, it would be ignored, and no officials would discuss it. As long as one official stood out and agreed with the Empress, it was necessary to discuss this topic. The situation in the imperial court was complicated, and no one could predict the future. The officials who could be in the imperial court were all experienced and cunning. No one would risk the Academy's condemnation in order to protect His Majesty and give His Majesty a way out. They had never seen such a bold person. Now they saw it. The people of the Academy naturally would not allow Li Mu to slander the Academy. Vice President Chen said, "You are just an imperial censor. How dare you speak so arrogantly? The Academy has provided so many talents to the imperial court every year. Why can't it meet the imperial court's needs?" Talents? Li Mu glanced at him and asked, "A talent like Jianghu, relying on the Academy's background, raped a woman in broad daylight. Is this the talent the Academy mentioned?" This matter had become a pain for the Academy. Vice President Chen said with a gloomy face, "This kind of bastard is just a special case. He can't represent the Academy. The Academy has expelled him and will never hire him again." Li Mu shook his head and said, "Instructor Fong, as an instructor of the Academy, did not set an example and strictly restrain his students. Instead, he allowed Jianghu to rape a woman and tried to deceive the imperial court afterward to cover up his crime. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. What kind of students can such an instructor teach? If such a student enters the imperial court and becomes an official, how many people will be bullied by him?" He said coldly, "The instructor is like this, the students are like this. His Majesty just pointed out the shortcomings of the Academy. What right do you have to scold His Majesty as a sinner?" Vice President Chen was speechless for a moment, and then immediately said, "Instructor Fong can't represent all the instructors of the Academy. You are generalizing. What about the county magistrate of Yang County?" Li Mu continued to ask. As a county magistrate, he colluded with the local tyrants and exploited the people. He created an unjust case that shook the Great Zhou. Even the heavens couldn't stand it. Which academy did he come from? The vice president of the Myriad Scroll Academy lowered his head slightly. Vice President Chen said, "You are still generalizing. There are 36 counties in the Great Zhou and hundreds of county magistrates. What can a county magistrate of Yang County prove?" Li Mu smiled at him and said, "Okay, let's not talk about the place. Let's talk about Shendu. As far as I know, the county chief of the North County has long disliked the county magistrate of Yang County's actions. He has submitted many memorials, but the evaluation of the county magistrate of Yang County by the Ministry of Personnel every year is A+. Because of this, the county magistrate of Yang County is even more unscrupulous and can do whatever he wants. This kind of corrupt official can be A+, the highest grade. Are the officials sent by the academy to the Ministry of Personnel all blind and deaf?" The Minister of Personnel's face was livid. The faces of the officials of the Ministry of Personnel also alternated between green and white. In front of His Majesty and hundreds of officials, they could only endure being scolded in their noses. This was because what he said was the truth. The county magistrate of Yang County was the brother-in-law of the Assistant Minister of Personnel. The Assistant Minister had personally instructed, so who would dare to make things difficult for him in the evaluation? The officials were silent. Who didn't know about the problems of the Ministry of Personnel? Who didn't know? But the problem was, which Ministry of Personnel wasn't like this in the past dynasties? Most of the officials in the imperial court had their own factions. Wasn't it common for members of the same faction to help and cover for each other? The Ministry of Personnel controlled the evaluation and promotion of officials in the Great Zhou. It was normal for them to give the brother-in-law of the Assistant Minister of Personnel an A+. But in the imperial court, this was the first person who dared to scold the officials of the Ministry of Personnel as blind and deaf. Before this, they all thought that Li Mu was influenced by Zhang Chun of Shendu like boss, like subordinate. Only now did they realize that they seemed to have gotten it the other way around. The Minister of Personnel's face was red. He coughed lightly and explained, "This is the dereliction of duty of the Ministry of Personnel. This has already sounded the alarm bell for the Ministry of Personnel. We will reflect on ourselves in the future to reduce such incidents." "Don't give me that." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Who doesn't know that the county magistrate of Yang County is the brother-in-law of the Assistant Minister of Personnel? This isn't the first time the Ministry of Personnel has done something like this. Why are you still pretending in front of me?" The Minister of Personnel covered his mouth and coughed uncontrollably. He retreated to his seat. The Assistant Minister of Personnel clenched his fists tightly. The veins on his forehead bulged, but he could only lower his head. Many of the officials in the imperial court were dumbfounded. They couldn't help but label Li Mu as a lunatic. Even the strongest imperial censor they had seen was not half as strong as him. He had torn down the veil of the Ministry of Personnel and exposed the officials of the Ministry of Personnel completely naked in front of the other officials. But Li Mu didn't stop there. He pointed around and said, "And the Ministry of Rights, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Revenue, and Taichung Temple. How many officials in the 6 ministries and 9 temples have failed to discipline their sons? You let them do whatever they want in Luoyang and bully the people. Instead of being ashamed, you are proud of it. Don't you know how many times you have protected them?" The Minister of Justice secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he didn't fight to the death with Li Mu. Instead, he chose to build a good relationship with him. Otherwise, he might have been called out by Li Mu in the Golden Palace like the Assistant Minister of Personnel. Li Mu looked at the people from the academy and said, "These are the talents that the academy sent to the imperial court. Are you going to say that these are special cases? Then you have too many special cases." Vice President Chen and the others were finally speechless. This had just happened in Luoyang. Li Mu's subordinates had beaten up many officials' sons. He even forced the officials involved to change the silver law of substitution. The officials were silent. Li Mu continued, "I won't say more. The officials from the academy have formed cliques in the imperial court and are hostile to each other. Can't you see that?" His loud voice echoed in the Golden Palace. Even the giants standing at the front couldn't help but notice him, because he was too talkative and dared to say it. He had broken the rules that the officials had tacitly agreed to. He had exposed the things that the officials wouldn't normally talk about. He had torn down the veil of the entire imperial court. Throughout history, those who dared to break the rules like this had all died without a complete corpse. Li Mu scanned the faces of the people from the academy one by one and said, "Look at what you have done. His Majesty is wise and has the world in mind, but you only think about your own interests. What right do you have? What right do you have to reprimand His Majesty? Don't you feel ashamed when you reprimand His Majesty?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.